Right, we've got liftoff, Tom.
Perfect.
So you've got your own channel.
Yep.
Um, uh, Last time I looked, several days ago, you got two videos up there, and you're mostly talking about philosophers, Western philosophers, and Greek philosophers and stuff like that. And so you've been to uni or college, and you've got some sort of an idea about philosophy then now.
Yeah. Did there's three more videos that came up. Maybe I didn't. No, I've gotten a couple of views, but yeah, no, I studied philosophy. And then like I was telling you before, I could tell the whole story. I was studying philosophy in Brighton University in the UK, and it was philosophy, politics, and ethics. And
Right.
the first half of the course was a very intensive history of philosophy course. The second half of the course started to get into you choose an option pathway, and I chose radical critical theory and radical politics, which is the root of all this identity politics stuff, which I wasn't totally aware of it because it wasn't all this gender and stuff. That wasn't even a thing. That wasn't even a thing when I was studying this. It came so quick. But
Right.
what happened was is that when I was studying the history of philosophy, I was very interested in metaphysics and all this stuff. I was trying to for myself because previously to that, I had I'd done a few things, and I read the book Siddhartha. I've always been interested in the nature of reality, the nature of the mind, and all this stuff. And so I decided when I was like 20 years old that I would just go and start meditating. And so I went to Spain, and I was living in a tent, and I meditated like hardcore all the time for in the tent all the time. And then I got a job, and I had a little flat. But over it was basically a 2 year period. I was basically on my own, just meditating all the time and drawing, life drawing, because the life drawing is a very stillness related practice. It's like I was just observing the world and observing myself and trying to understand what was this thing. And I was having all these crazy revelations, and I was getting all this information. And so I was like, shit, what am I going to do with this? Because I'm just like, hauled away on my own in the middle of nowhere. I'm a young person, so I need to sort of do something with this, or find some way. I need to go back into the world. This is also coming in vision form and through intuition form. I was like, I need to go and do something. So I was no, and also I used to listen to Terence McKenna. It was even before podcasts were even hardly even a thing then. And just the way that all the words he used and all his information, I was like, shit, if I can't speak like that, then like what I thought deep down was that somehow the books are gonna give me the answers for what I'm experiencing. So then I actually met my girlfriend who we have kids with. I'm not married, but um, I met her there, and she couldn't get it's seasonal work where we are, so she couldn't work in the winter. And I was like, oh fuck it, I'll go back to England and to stay with her because it was just sort of a thing. I was like, I'll just go for it. And then the option came up where I applied to a university for philosophy, and I got in, so I just went with that.
Or
And
where was that? Barcelona.
no, in Brighton,
On
University
Brighton,
of
right?
Brighton.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And then so as I was studying it, I got really interested in the concept of time, and I was getting very, very deep into all these very metaphysical concepts. And I was having, like, I know it was the second time I went to university, but I was like, I was acing everything. But the problem was with this state of the university system at that point. It was hard for me to like even broach a lot of the topics. It was like I said, I was doing critical theory and radical politics, so it was all about this like identity politics and stuff. And I wanted to write about the nature of time. So, but in that course, I had some massive breakthroughs, and I realized, like, actually, I've got this is what I was looking for. I was looking for this piece of information that I needed. Um, and at that point, like I said before, it was all this stuff. I was sensing this vibe in the UK with this sort of authoritarian thing closing in. And so I was like, yeah, fuck it, I'm off. I'm gonna go to Spain, and I'm
So,
gonna
so what year
start
would that
working.
be?
2017, I made the plan. I think I came out in 2018.
Right.
It was very, but I was like, we're gonna have a family. To my girlfriend, we're gonna have a family, and we're just gonna do our thing. And I had it in the back of my mind. I'll continue this later, the philosophy stuff. Um, and so that's what I did. And then after a couple of years of working, I started to I don't know what it is, but I was getting very too caught up in the material world. I was getting really angry and stuff, and there's like people. I was had this real deep level of frustration, and then I realized like, oh shit, yeah, because I'm focusing all my energy just on like business and stuff, and I need to be focusing on the immaterial world. You know, I need to continue on with my path of
Yeah.
understanding. So at that point, it's crazy. There's a guy who's it's a long story, but it's worth it. Um, there's my friend's dad here in Spain had this massive revelation, and he wrote a book. It's called Human Design. He made this like system of astrology. But the first line in that book, I picked it up because I found an old version of it, an original copy, and the first line of the book was, the problem with the understanding in the West is the understanding of time. And I was like, what? This is crazy. So, and then in my head, I was like, all right, I need to learn about astrology. I started looking into that, and I couldn't find anything good at all. It was just bullshit woo-woo stuff on the internet. And I was like, I don't know how. I was sort of at a loss. And then the night of my daughter's birth, this old man came up to me, right? This is it's crazy. And and we just started chatting about shit. But I had this sort of sense about him. He had this really intense look. And and I don't know, he had an infection in his leg. I actually was making cannabis oil at the time, and I told him, I'll help you out, I'll bring you some. But again, it's the night of my daughter's birth. And he didn't have, neither of us had a phone. He lived in a caravan in the middle of nowhere. And he just described like the dirt road they lived on. And I was like, I had it in my head, didn't really think about it. My daughter was born, and then I forgot. So the next day I went back, I was outside, I was just smoking a cigarette, and I saw him again. And this, I'm just saying this because it is interesting. I went up to him, and I had forgotten where he lived. And when I first went up to him, he started speaking to me in Spanish, because it's like he didn't recognize me. And then I was like, and then it like clicked in his head, and he looked at me dead in the eyes, and he's like, he told me exactly where he lived. And I was like, did he just read my mind? And and then after that, we other conversations. He looked at me again with this crazy look, and he's like, "You're a Taurus," and I was like, "What?" Because I didn't even mention anything about astrology, or anything. It's like, "I'm glad I met you," and I was like, "This is too much. This is too crazy." So I had this feeling that I need to go on. I need to figure out what this is about. Anyway, so we arranged to meet with. It wasn't this exact arrangement, but within like 10 days, I was going to go back, and I was going to go to his thing and just give him this kind of so, and we'd talk further because he mentioned he was a holistic doctor and all this stuff. But I had the sense because I had just started reading about or listening to things about hermetic philosophy and stuff like that, alchemy and stuff. And I had a sense like, all right, this is something. So it took me a month to get back because obviously new baby. It was I didn't find the time. And when I got there, I found the caravan in the middle of nowhere, and this guy, it looked really empty. And this guy came up to the guy who owned the land, and I was like, "Yo, does this old guy live here?" And he's like, "Yeah, he died." I was like, "Wait, what?" He's like, "Yeah, no, he
Wow.
died." And I was like, okay, well, this is crazy. But because he had told me he had no friends, no family, and I had the sense that he was in this form of thinking where he had all this information that he needed to share. I was like, all right, I'm just gonna bust into the caravan and see what's in there. I had the feeling he'd left something for me. Um, and so I went in, and there was all these all this shit. I asked the guy, I was like, "Well, can I take can I take any of this?" And he's like, "Yeah, well, I mean, you can have it. I don't give a fuck." He was like this really like sort of sketchy guy, who's hard to explain because he's just a character you don't really meet normally. He was just like, "Yeah, well, fuck it, I don't care, just get rid of it." And the thing is that retrospectively, on top of one of these cases of books, and it was all this stuff, crazy stuff, like crystals and a crystal wand that has all these inscriptions on it, like with copper wire and a sealed bit of mercury in it, like real. Like I was like, because I'm a very skeptical person, but I was like, this is like so elaborate, this is insane. But on top of one of these things with all the books had a crystal pyramid, and in it it said Capricorn. And I didn't know what that meant at all, but I later found out that was my daughter's birth sign, and I was like, that was that was the sign left there. But anyway, in this collection of shit was a bunch of handwritten books, all this stuff about that was leading me to. Anyway, I had a huge download revelation when I started opening up, and I didn't need to read half of it. It was just like boom, huge information download. And it was like the missing piece of the stuff that I couldn't understand. All Western philosophy is like rooted in the logical sense, and I have always sort of been skeptical of people who are too much in the mystical stuff because I can see that it's like a way that people use it's an ego trick. I met people who would talk about all this stuff, but really they're massive egomaniacs and they're pretending to be spiritual. So it really put me off it. But yeah, so I had all this stuff, and I was still at a loss because I'm like, I don't know where to go. This is nowhere on the internet you can find anything about what this even means or what to do with it. But I found a Taoist priest who speaks on YouTube, and reading between the lines of what he's saying, I was like, he's talking about the same thing. So I reached out to him, and then he started teaching me internal alchemy, Taoist internal alchemy. He taught me Taoist philosophy and all this stuff, which is what led me to well, I was always going to go and do the philosophy stuff, but I needed, this was the other side that I was totally missing and not understanding. Because if the crazy thing is, all the new agey stuff, all this crap is actually in, this is all still retained in Taoism, and this has been an oral tradition taught from teacher to student, it's martial arts, it's internal martial arts. It includes all this stuff, Tai Chi and Qigong and energy practices to
Yeah.
understand the Qi. Um, and all this crazy cosmology and spiritual stuff. And through that period of time, it's just like, it was insane information downloads. I had it was really intense and very interesting, but also, like totally like out of this world, huge, like boom, head explosion. It was 4 years ago. I'm just sort of like getting to a place of balancing everything out, because it's a whole practice of balancing out all your life and all everything, all your karma and everything, getting everything straight so that you can go and do something useful, and
So
not just
was
be
he
a
an alchemist?
what.
Was he an alchemist?
I assume so. I assume so. Yes.
Yeah.
I assume so. But internal. This is the thing. This is something I learned from
Well, you
the
see,
guys
the
who.
the whole thing about alchemy really is internal because
Yeah.
it's
Yes. Yeah.
the seeking for the philosopher's stone, and the
Yeah. But
philosopher's
that
stone is your
is,
higher self.
yes. That also in Chinese alchemy, it's a process of upgrading your energy.
Yeah.
You create this energy body, and you further and further and further purify that, and that gives you extreme energy and all sorts of stuff, clarity and peace. It's all about healing your mind, healing your body, and then having the energy to do great things. But also, there's all this stuff with energy healing and stuff like that, like being able to absorb and transmit energy. Non Spirit. I
Yeah.
don't know what it is. There's not a word for it in the West yet, but it exists. It's a real thing. It's a
Oh,
hundred percent
yeah,
a real thing. Yeah,
without
yeah,
a doubt.
yeah, yeah.
Are you familiar with Jung very much?
He wrote the introduction to the Secret of the Golden Flower, which is
Right.
a Chinese, internal alchemy document. It's one of the best. It's probably the best written information about internal alchemy, because all of it is oral tradition.
Yeah, so of course Jung was very, very deep into all of this mystical stuff and alchemical stuff, and he studied for years and years and years, trying to crack all the codes.
Yeah.
And reading his stuff is really, really beneficial.
Yes,
How many
absolutely.
books did you manage to come away with from the Alchemist
From the
Caravan?
old guy. Okay. Um, there's handwritten books. There's like three or
Right.
four handwritten books. This is why it was like so mind blowing, because I was like, holy shit! It's like literally written as. I don't know if he sat down and wrote it for me, or if this was written with the intention of finding some student to pass this information on. I
And
have
is it
no idea.
written in English?
Written in English. He was German, but he's also spoke Spanish. But it was written in, or he's Austrian. Again, it came with all this history. Is in the arm. Like I've all. Another thing is, like, I was on this. I've actually been put off this, which I need to get back to. Is to find. I have some shit that I need to give to his son, because he told me that he was estranged from his son, and his wife, she left him, because again, this is something that happens, I think, and it was part of what I needed to see, is that when you get into this path, then if you get too far into it, you can destroy your life in terms of your personal life. And what my Taoist teacher said is like, um, the goal of a Taoist, because obviously, people who become involved in deeply in spirituality, there's many different paths, but the Taoists are very practical. They say, because the route is to immortality, but first you have to get your family right, then you have to then you do great, get your community right, then you approach the world, and then you've done your bit, and you're old enough that you can go and start to do the proper cultivation to uh, be, become immortal, whatever that means. Which, I mean, it is very outlined. It's a very, very, there's a very structured system to do it. It's been hidden for good reason, because there's only very few people are of the type to do it.
Hmm.
And
Well,
and
I'm going to say the likes of Hermes Trismegistus, the immortal one.
yeah,
Um, they're when we get into this deep esoteric stuff, it does lead to uh, immortal paths,
always.
um, and for a few ascended masters, it's all about channeling other dimensions of the
Yeah,
astral and the ethereal and the causal, all these different paradigms of consciousness that we can experience via um, meditation, recitations,
exactly.
uh, all the rest of the stuff, calling on deities and demons and what have you. Yeah, I'm sure it's all out there, and there's lots of people still doing it today. And
But the funny thing is that again, like this guy, no friends, no family, living in a caravan. Um, Humility is a huge part. I think it's just something that happens. The hermit life. Like they say that in the Wudang Mountains in China, there's all these immortals or hermits who are hundreds of years old who just live in caves, and
mhm,
people go out in search of them. And like if it's your time, then you'll come across them, and they'll teach you the ways. But the funny thing is that um, someone asked my teacher that, and they're like, "Are there really immortals who are still alive?" And then he's like, "Yes," like just complete yes, there are. Um, and I find it really interesting. But there, like again, all this stuff. I'm a very skeptical person. Although like when you get, it was like I don't know if you call it Kundalini awakening, but it happened to me slightly before I I started learning this internal alchemy, which has actually really helped me to balance everything. But I had this sort of like boom, like I assume it's what they call the Kundalini awakening, where you get this like big, huge like energy rush, and you can all this other dimensional stuff. But oh fuck, I forgot what I was gonna say there. Um,
so
Oh,
the
but yeah. So I became a little bit less skeptical at that point, but I was still skeptical enough to look into like, are there really examples of this level of longevity? And at least, I mean, there from the Wu Dang tradition, there's a video of a guy who's 120 years old and he's performing the perfect Tai Chi, and the way he moves is crazy. But then there's literal like from the Chinese census, there's reports of a guy who lives to be 235. He was a Taoist priest, and again, he was very humble, herbalist. He had a small life. He just did his own. That's a huge part of it because longevity is also related to your emotions. So humility, calmness, all this stuff is essential for. That's part of the cultivation. Is you're cultivating this energy that is a healing energy that's continuously flowing through your body, and
mhm.
that's part of it, and that humility is part of that, and hermitage is basically part of that because I was so funny. I was thinking it today. I was thinking like, if I could do anything, I would just go sit and meditate all this fucking time because it feels better and better and better and more and more and more, just all encompassing. It's like I think, yeah, I think that's what it gets to because these practices you generate a sort of I can't explain it. They call it the elixir. You generate this thing inside you that it's a psychological, physical thing that you just connect to, and it's like oh, it feels really nice, and it just increases and increases and increases in size.
Yeah.
But I
So
think it's the same about meditation. But this is it's a very it was different than any meditation that I've ever done. It's just it's same as Tibetan Buddhism has the same sort of stuff. All it's in all these older things, the yogas and all this. There's certain branches of yoga that still retain these practices, which is but again, it's you have to not want whether the practice stops you from wanting to attract go out the material world. I think what it is you have to have all these set experiences in your life until you're ready to say, yeah, fuck it, I don't care. I'm not bothered about going and getting money. I'm not bothered about going to chase women. I'm not bothered about eating fancy food. I'm not bothered about drugs. I'm not bothered about experiences. I want to go all the way inside because that's like Sadhguru says it. He has a good example. He's like he said it to I don't know some person who was like interviewing him, and he's like, look, if you chase the material world, there's only so much you can accumulate. You get to a point where you can't accumulate anymore. It has no meaning. The Oh no, the pursuit of the external world, you're always trying to push boundaries, but at a certain point, there's boundaries you can't push anymore in the external world. If that's at the point you start to go interior, and that's boundless. So that pursuit of pursuing life that people are going at now, like so over insanely in the world with all this trying to get what people are doing. Um, that's just a like immature version of the interior pursuit, because you know what I'm talking about. The interior world is endless, and you go further and further and further and further and deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. And that, I think that's the spiritual. That's like the turn from the material world life to the spiritual life.
Hmm. Yeah, I'm a bit skeptical about Sadhguru because
Yeah, I know.
he's never impressed me with anything I've ever heard him say. And he's very, very partial to thousands of dollars worth of silk wrapped all around
True.
himself. He's very partial to the most prestigious of cars and sunglasses.
That, yeah, that I
Look,
did see that.
whenever you see this
Yeah,
guy, when he's not getting paid 100 grand on stage, he wears jeans, trainers, Ray-Ban fucking sunglasses,
yeah, yeah,
and he drives a
exactly.
convertible fucking Maserati or some fucking thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I did see one video where it had like sunglasses on, and I was like, but then when
It's all show,
I
all show, mate.
there's yeah, but there's certain levels of what he says that I can see that that is also like he's getting at something. Like
Yeah, well,
he's been in this, he's at a very deep level of this thing.
yeah,
Um, and it's like, you know, by his, it's that endless energy constantly doing things, the effect, it's the effect on the world. I mean, it's, yeah, it's kind of like cringy that millions of people come into his things, but it's, that's, to me, it's like, he's not being a hermit, but he's on some mission, and he's doing that mission to spread this information. But what, there's certain things that he says, the way that he answers a question, I can see that he's going in. He's going in. He's not. And you know, there's one that you should watch. If I know is, but watch this thing. It's him and Steven Pinker at Harvard. It happened in the winter, and that is one of the, I was like, there's part of me that was like crying with joy that this happened, because he just cuts through all the, well, I know and I'm so correct and all this shit, you know, Steven Pinker, and he's like it's so worth watching, because it's like, I was like, that is a mark of the shift of the whole of the consciousness that this conversation has had, and the outcome, because the outcome is everyone's clapping their asses off for what Sadhguru was saying, and all he's saying is, hey, look, forget about, why are we putting all this money into universities when we should be putting it into mental health, and we should be helping the people, like, you know what I mean? And it's just it's, there's parts of him that I do very much, because there's, I can see that he's in that, he's deep, compared to all the other celebrity guru types. He's the most authentic of the like mega celebrity type ones.
yeah, he's putting something back. But you know, one of the things that have reservations about, he will never ever speak about himself. When anybody asks any personal questions, he won't go there, and he's adamant that he's never read a book in his life, and he can't read and write. Actually, he says, "I never
Well,
actually learned to read and write."
you know,
That's a
that's true.
complete
It
fabrication.
is it's also a lie, because I listened to one thing where he was saying, and I'm not saying you're lying, I'm saying it's potentially that he's lying. That he, but you know, this can happen. I think this is one thing, like fame. You know, like the inflation of the ego through fame. I don't think anyone's. I don't. I mean, I don't think anyone's. What's the word? Immune to it, or anyone can protect themselves against it. And I think that might even be the reason for seeking hermitage, is that uh, becoming famous on that, it just uh, it makes you deviate from the path, because you become too involved with your own image, and you forget what you're actually doing here.
Yeah, and if you're not completely authentic, then you're going to be hiding your skeletons in the
Oh
closet.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I think it's
Um,
true, because I'm sure he's had like marriage issues, and like I read between the lines when people talk, and he said, you always, and also, you know, it's true. He does repeat the same stories, and I think when people repeat the same stories, I'm like, and it's not, no, but there's a way of repeating the same story. Like
yeah,
there's certain things that need to be explained if you're just telling your story, but then like when things are too repeated, I'm like, that's inauthentic. It's not. He's not speaking from. He's not going in and saying, what am I actually thinking here?
yeah, and he's not calling on a personal experience. I've never heard him call on any personal experience. You see, my way
Interesting.
of delivery, I'm speaking about my personal experience because it's the only thing I can tell you absolutely
Absolutely
categorically.
sure. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah,
Instead of just speaking in vagaries about
yeah.
what consciousness is and what spiritualism is and all this sort of stuff. We can get that in anywhere. You can get
Yeah,
it
exactly.
all across the whole board.
Yeah, exactly.
What's echoing? I've got to turn something down. Test, test, test. That's better. Does that sound okay? You can still
Yeah,
hear
yeah,
me?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. Um, so yeah, the authenticity. I mean, of course, uh, people they have a bit of an issue sometimes with my delivery. And they seem to opine that I destroy my channel or my potential by doing what I do, and I'm like, well, look, I'm a Libra. I'm all about
Mhm.
balance, and I want to bring balance to the cosmos.
Yeah,
And all I can see
that's
going on all around me is a leaning towards the greatest lie that's ever happened, that we're all equal. Is a complete fabrication. It's a complete crock of shit. And so I spit a bit of venomous truth now and again,
of course.
which is probably over the top, but to bring it down to a level and to
Do
get
you know what's
people to
interesting as
think,
well? Is it reminds I was trying to think of the word for it because the funny thing is I know I know exactly what you're saying. It's also it's a good technique. Like it's I find this when I don't argue as much anymore. Again, I don't know, maybe it's from the practices and all this stuff. But like when I used to argue or things that bother me with people, like I would say it over and over and over again. And then if someone just doesn't listen, then you say the exact opposite really intensely, and then it's like boom. You know what I mean? But there's a branch in India called the Agori. These people are called the Agori, and they're the ones who they have dreadlocks, and they go around, they wear loincloths, and their goal is this: to be as disgusting as possible, to completely be as disgusting as possible, to be as off-putting as possible. It's a path towards liberation. But I thought it was so interesting because that's actually I was thinking it's part of that the Agori thing. It's you should look it up. It's really interesting. They do all this stuff, but it's like they live in the funeral grounds and they eat the bodies. It's a
wow,
way of it's an extreme path to separate from the world of the ego, because I think it's very interesting in India. I think it's got so many. It's probably the longest history
test,
of
test.
actual.
That's better.
Yeah, it's probably the longest history of actual retained spiritual growth in India, and they have all these different routes for different types of people. But yeah, no, it just reminded me of that. But I thought it's like what it is because you're putting off people. It's like if you want to, it's those people. They're saying if you want to, it's someone who wants to go and learn from Nagori, it has to be a very specific type of person,
You really got
and
to want to
they
know
have
the
to have already
information.
proven exactly,
Yeah.
and you have to really want to know.
Yeah, so my policy is
It's
that
like a test.
I want to perturb shrinking violets, automatons or husks, Christians, and the fool, because they're not going to benefit from anything I'm going to have to say, and so
In fact,
I'm always
they'll probably just
separating the
be
wheat from
annoying
the chaff.
in the comments.
Sorry.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. In fact, they'll probably just be annoying, saying annoying stuff, trying to give you advice
Yeah,
because they
they
don't
just
actually
say
see that
annoying shit.
they don't see what you actually know because they're unable to see to that level because
Yeah.
they haven't let go of a certain level of things to be able to see what you're saying. So they're just trying. They'll think they'll be giving you advice like, "Oh, you should do that." Yeah, like
Yeah, absolutely. They
yeah,
come on and just in one video, they start saying this and that. And I'm like, you've watched one video and you think you know who I am?
yeah.
What is this ridiculous stupidity that you've got? And so, yeah, it comes out in vulgarities and some harsh words and a bit of intimidating energy, but it serves me, and it serves me in another way. You see, Tom, because it stops people, the weak-minded people, thinking
Mm,
that they can impose on me and they can be
mm,
my friend and they can take
mm,
liberties. In the old
mm.
days, I used to have people phone me up just randomly and like ask me about this and ask me about that without even asking me, is it convenient? And I
That's
just stopped
crazy.
one guy at one moment in time. I said, who the fuck are you? And who the fuck do you think I am? That it's just
Yeah,
going to be at your beck and fucking call. You've got
yeah,
my number
exactly.
off the internet or some fucking place, and you think
Yeah.
you're at liberty just to call me like you're my best mate.
But that's a
Oh well, I
lesson.
mean, I don't. I mean, well, if you're going to be like that, yes, I am going to be like
Yeah,
that.
that's you teaching a lesson though, because that's real human spirit. Like this is self-respect. This is a
Yeah.
thing that people you sacrifice your self-respect, you know, so that you can get away with doing stuff. This is a big issue that's going on in the world. It's like you don't say that something's bothering you so that you can do things that are going to bother other people and you know it, and they're not going to say anything because
Yes.
it's fine, it's fine. This is how it works in the office place and all this stuff that everyone's conditioned into. You know, it's like oh, you know.
Yeah, you see this whole thing, this liberalist thing, it's the greatest protectionist mechanism that's ever come about to protect the lowest in the echelon, the lowest in the barrel, the absolute lowest of human being that you can ever encounter. They want to bring everybody down to their level and pretend that they're all equal.
And
No.
also, yeah, but I have the feeling that that is if there is a massive intention behind it, it's because right now anyone who has a brain and is looking at the situation can see that the all the preliminary criteria that made it necessary to put in place representative governments now have been undercut by technology. um, we don't need a government anymore. We don't need the banks anymore. We don't need authority anymore. Everyone can be taught. Everyone can. We can set up computer systems to manage all of the getting information and collating the votes and getting everything together. The only thing that's that can stop people is literal stupidity and fear. That's the thing. The more smart, empowered people are around, everyone's gonna be like, "Are you crazy? I'm gonna give you half my money in taxes. You fucking crazy. Shut up." You know, like that's stupid. It's dumb now at this point, and there's so much information out there that everyone can learn whatever they want. Universities are done. All of that is done. It's over. It's just people. The material world has not caught up to the collective unconscious yet. It's over. And that's what's happening, and it's just now this desperate attempt to keep the thing going so that some people can basically retire. The old because it's the old guard can extract as much as they want and keep on living like billionaires until they die. That's it.
Yeah, and so we're definitely heading into very tumultuous times because all this nonsense is going to come to a head. And I don't know how prolific you are with watching intellectuals on YouTube.
It's
Um,
probably too much.
right, okay. And so
It's-
did you watch people like the Weinstein brothers?
oh, maybe not too much. No, no.
Right?
Oh, Brett.
Do you
Oh,
listen to Russell
is he
Brand?
the? Yeah, well, I messaged Russell Brand and I told him I gave him a huge. It's funny that you said you messaged him as well. I was like, we're like, it doesn't matter. But I sent in 2020 or 2021. I gave him like a philosophy lesson. This is everything that's going on. This is the situation. This is where we're at, and this is what we need to do. And he took the advice. No, he took all the information, and he started. Now he speaks so eloquently, and he's mentioning all these different movements in philosophy, and he's making all these really grand and eloquent points. But he failed to act on the key point, which was now we need to focus on it, bringing light to where this new world is being formed. Not stop giving everyone's attention to the fucking controllers and start giving the attention to the people who are building the new decentralized world. He didn't do that because, of course, again, it's I don't know why, but I did regret doing it, but I didn't because again, I didn't have a platform at that time. There was no way for me to do it. So I messaged all the people I know who had power enough, and I gave them the same set of information. This is what's going on. This is what we need to do. This is what needs to happen. He's the only one who I can actually check up on because he's the only one who has like a social platform. I messaged like people like the head of the philosophy course that I went to. Anyone who I saw who had a certain. But with him, I've always seen a certain. I can't explain it, but it doesn't matter. But I've seen something where I regretted sending that. But I hope it. The funny thing is like I'm certain that he did read it, and because there's one reference that I made to the usual suspects, Kaiser Soze, and he brings it up more, and I'm like, yeah, it's stuck in his head. That message. It was a very long series. It was a series of messages it stuck in his head because and I also know because he started mentioning all this stuff these points but it's good it was the right move but then something always repeated with me was created regret now because the Taoists say those who know don't talk and those who talk don't know and I was like that's what it's talking about. Because if you give certain information, it can be used either way. It can be used to inflate someone's ego. Because that's what I did when I was at university. Well, no, I didn't. I've never really been like that. But I could see the effect of being eloquent and being very like Jordan Peterson being so logical and constructing these perfect arguments. But it's an ego game. It's just a domination ego game.
It's an ego game.
It doesn't get to the point. And actually, the facts are way simpler. If you are very smart and you're trying to teach, you need to make it as simple as possible and bring it down to the lamest terms. All of that language, unless it's very highly specific technical language for necessity, is just eloquent ego shit.
Yes, and this
100%.
is what I've stated in recent videos of mine. I've watched Peterson
Yeah.
ever since he came to fame, and
Yeah.
I
Same.
watched many of his university lectures before he came to fame,
Yeah.
and so he did admit that in his early days at university, he was very embroiled in his own ego and his own elocution,
Yeah.
and shooting people down with his arguments. And he considers that he's learned from that now, but he seems to me to be getting more highfalutin with every time I listen to him, because he's just going off, and his face is scrooching up, and
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
trying
Yeah.
to think of
Yeah.
this and think of that.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he was
So
interviewed by, by
serious.
by one guy, and he was really great.
Yeah.
He's only a young guy. He's only about 25, and I
Yeah.
forget what the name of the channel is, but I did mention it
Yeah.
in one of my videos. And this guy said to him, said, Jordan, don't you think that your analysis of that, biblical story, to most people is just going to sound outlandish and ridiculous? Because nobody's going to be grasping it at your level. You're out there in Jordan Peterson world.
Yeah, but also the funny thing is, I came across him in 2016 when I was studying philosophy, and immediately I was like, "Shut up!" Like, because the things that he's saying, this is because the thing that was so useful for me with that was simplifying ideas, because I was going through like hundreds of years of history of philosophy off the course, everything. I was trying to understand, get his picture of the universe and reality. And what you get very good at if you properly study philosophy is simplifying ideas, because you
Yeah.
need to be able to you need to go through the whole past history of what we have, because we're stuck right now in a present that's got all this. We've got like a collective unconscious that we're like living through without being aware of it. So you have to gather all the pieces where it came in. You have to simplify and pack it into like one little thing that you can understand as like an intuitive thing. And so but point being, when I was watching this shit, I was like, look, you could have said that in one sentence.
Mm,
I could simplify everything he's saying to one sentence, I just had a feeling. I was like, he's just caught up in logic. It's too logical,
yeah.
or it's impractically logical.
Yeah.
It's getting caught up in the idea, the thing of using language. Language is it's just a trap. It's a trap for it's nothing more than a pragmatic tool. It's not the sort to get at the source of truly information.
No, and the thing is, with these people now falling back in time into Christianity, because the shit's going to be hitting the fan, they're not innovating as to how we're going to move through into a
No,
new dimension of consciousness. They're
no,
falling back on
no, no.
2,000-year-old dead desert dogma, and
Yeah,
they're
but I
trying to
think also
make
because
it sound so real. Peterson is trying to find the way in which to really bring out a truth and a reality from those stupid old shit stories. And some
is
of them are
it?
mediocre. They're
Yeah,
not too bad for stupid people 2,000 years ago, but he's trying
yeah,
to bring them into the 21st
but
century as if to
it's
really mean something to take us forward, and it's just
yeah,
not
no,
working.
it's crazy. No, it's crazy. You know, what's funny is I never read the Bible. It's funny. I grew up. I was a kid. I was in America, and I had Christian. I just like knew. I always knew what the point of the Bible was. It's like I never. And just recently, I started reading. I was like, "What the fuck is this shit?" Oh, this person was born then, and this person was born then, and that and that. And I was like, "This is so ridiculous." But what I was
The numbers.
when I yeah when I when I got to all this, when I had the most intense of my sort of like information about all this alchemy stuff, what I realized is that the point is, every generation, as language evolves and people evolve and we get more information, every generation, 100 years or so, the core principles need to be re-articulated. They need to be re-articulated in a totally new form to fit the language of the time. That's what the great work is. The task of all the really good thinkers, who most of these people don't understand, or even just it's like a sideline. Like people
Yeah.
like Leibniz and stuff like that. There's certain Hegel maybe, certain thinkers, when you look at them, it's like they're expressing this really comprehensive view of the reality, and within it comes all this information about how you should act and what you should do and what the future holds. And it's there's a common thread that runs through all of that, but the work is to re-articulate the stuff and to understand the core essence and how it needs to be experienced. This isn't a matter of experience, and only certain people get there. You know what I'm saying? I think about that. Like, and that's why you can see through that stuff, because people get caught up in the words and like, oh, because people hear these big words that they don't understand and they think this person knows something different to them. If he
Yes.
was to reverse it and transmit to you the interior of his mind, you'd look at it and say, oh yeah, okay, cool, whatever. That's all right. I get what you're saying. You know what I mean? Like, if you look through his eyes and you got what actually the core experience of what he was expressing was, you'd be like, all right, yeah, simple. Okay, move on. Well,
Yes.
next bit, please.
So in one of my videos, I decried the ancient uh, Gnostics, secret societies, um, mystery schools, and all this
Mhm.
sort of thing, and all these scholars are endlessly labouring over what did this mean and what did that mean.
Exactly.
And what I said was, look, these people, I don't think they knew anything more than any psychonaut in modern times who's took
No.
like 20 DMT hits or 10 experiences on psilocybin mushroom.
Yeah.
You go
Yeah.
into other worlds when you take
Mhm.
those things,
Yeah.
and you experience all this stuff which they wrote about in the Old Testament mostly, with apparitions and talking bushes and all this different sort of stuff.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
swear they're all on some variety of narcotic, DMT, or most certainly marijuana mixed with other things.
Yeah.
And
Marijuana is incredibly potent.
they hid anything about the spiritual world in
It
convoluted and code, and
exactly,
so when we
because the
look at
power
the
structure, we're trying to
nature,
kill these people. The power structure,
yeah,
we're trying to
yeah,
weed out
yeah,
the free thinking people
yeah,
who are directly connected to reality, because
if you
those
start,
people were like, hey, wait, that guy's lying, because they could see what the people were saying. They could see
yeah,
through the words to get at the core of what that guy's doing. It's like, well, he's just trying to control you. You know, that's what
yes.
it is.
Exactly. And if people started talking about meeting entities in the astral, then you'd be a
Mm.
witch and you'd be burnt.
Then
And
witches, yeah, exactly.
yeah, and if you spoke about seeing God in the
Right.
clouds like I did on
Yeah.
DMT, I've seen crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Then you'd have your head on a platter, and so I don't think there is anything too hidden from us today. I think we have all the information out there. It's
Exactly.
all available to us. It's all there in old books and scripts if you want to look for it, because I'm pretty sure that most of them are all uploaded onto the internet, except two
Yeah.
million scrolls that were in the Vatican. That sort of
Yeah.
shit they don't want us to know
Yeah.
about. But I think, I've read the Emerald Tablets, and I've read lots of
Mm.
this mystical school and
The
Gnostic
emerald
stuff and all this
The
sort of
Emerald
thing.
Tablets. Do you know the history of the Emerald Tablets? Well, there's the Emerald Tablet, and then there's the Emerald Tablets of Thoth. The Emerald
Yes.
Tablets were written by a guy named Maurice Doril in 1900, who was just like, it was I read it, and I had a
Are,
big
are, those,
I
are
had a big
those the
effect.
ones actually written on 13 emerald tablets?
Well, that's what was said. That's what he said. But this
Right.
book that we get, the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Thoth the Atlantean, oh, I'm from Atlantis and this and that.
Yeah.
That was written by a guy in the 19th century. And then when people pressed him to say, where'd you get this information from? He's like, oh, I got it from, I went and found these tablets in Egypt. And then they looked at his passport and they're like, you've never been to Egypt. And he's like, I asked to travel there. So I'm just saying,
Oh,
like,
I traveled.
that was something. Yeah, Joseph, and I don't
Joseph
negate.
Smith.
Yes, he's the same. This guy started a school called the
No
I can't remember what
horns.
it's called. Yeah, no, but he started a
Joseph
cult
Smith.
in America. Yeah, no,
Joseph Smith.
the
No.
Doreel.
Oh,
No,
the
no,
other guy.
Doreel, the
Oh,
guy who
right,
wrote the Emerald Tablets of Thoth.
right.
He started a cult based on this text that he wrote. Um, but I don't didn't negate the reality of astral information. I just thought the fact that this shit, I've seen it go all over the internet, and I thought at first that this was from 30,000 years ago, and then I found out that no, this is not that case. That's not the case. It actually was written by some dude. But I thought it was very interesting because when I read that book and I became engrossed in the information, it set me on a path which was extremely egotistical and delusional. I started thinking things, and then later on, I'm saying, "Wait, this isn't true. This isn't true." Where and I didn't realize why my judgment was off. And and it's if you're reading a book that's written by a guy who's pretending that he's not only is he pretending that a priest king, and I don't know, it could be true. Who knows? But the fact that he made this shit up, he lied about it, and then no one even knows that now. I just thought it's I still go back to it occasionally because it does have a powerful. There's some energy in there. There's definitely some energy in there,
Well,
and
well, well
it's the channel text. Channeling's real. I
yeah,
mean, but I
yeah,
just thought it's interesting that it's not more well known. It doesn't say this is written. It's not more well known the actual reality of where the story behind that guy. But
yeah.
then it
But
also could have been smearing. He could have been being smeared as well.
exactly. I'm
Who
even
knows?
skeptical
Yeah,
about that, because
yeah, yeah, yeah.
the professional people, CIA agents and all different sorts
Yes,
that
true, true.
set out to
That could have
debunk
said that out
everything. They
exactly, and they
debunk
could have written.
the protocols
Yeah,
of Zion. They
yeah.
debunk, anything that they don't
That's
want.
true because
The
the fact is, it does have a very powerful energy. That book
but what I will say
has
about the
an
Emerald
effect.
Tablets, as far as I'm concerned, looking at the lineage of the Atlantean, who ultimately became Thoth,
Hmm.
the Egyptian scribe, and
Yeah,
then it
yeah,
is
yeah.
said that became Jesus.
Hmm.
So, I don't look at anything like it needs to be corporeal in any way.
No, no, I agree. No, no, I
It's
agree.
all
That's yeah,
mythology
yeah,
passed
yeah, yeah,
down.
yeah. Exactly.
And
And also,
there was ancient information passed down. Thoth was just an idea of the scribes of the time. There
yeah,
wasn't just one dog-headed scribe that kept a book and this and the other. Because people then go looking for the book of Thoth. There was never any book of Thoth because Thoth is a
the
fictitious
guy who's writing it.
mythological creature.
Yeah,
But there was a thing, an essence of Thoth, and these scribes were the essence of Thoth, and they wrote all this stuff. All the priests of the temples, and all the ceremonies that they did, and everything like that.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah. No, it's and yeah,
in tablet number 4, if I remember correctly, it is speaking about what I knew at the time to be leaving the body, astral
yeah,
projection.
yeah, 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 yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
Because he
There's a
speaks
lot of
of
yeah.
if you lie down and become still for a very, very long time, then the earth will begin to thunder,
Shake.
and
Yeah,
the ground will shake around you, and then
exactly.
you'll go
Yeah.
travel into different worlds.
Yes, so it is. It is. Yeah, it is. It is
And I'm
true.
like, that's
It's true.
natural
It is. It
projection
is.
because that's what
Yeah, yeah,
happens with the
yeah.
body.
It's a set of. It is actually a set of. It's a very good set of tools for learning the spiritual practices.
And so
It's
when
pretty
I
good for a
now
book.
yes, well, when I
Yeah,
speak about the, ancient scriptures and this, that, and the other, um, and like you say, you absolutely have to have experience because if I didn't have experience of
exactly.
my body thundering and all different sorts of noises, and then me being projected into other worlds, then I wouldn't have been able to glean what he was speaking about. But because I
Exactly.
had that experience and I felt exactly what he was speaking about, then it meant something to me.
It
Um,
did.
but
It's
but to
true.
how many people would it just mean nothing? It'd just be
Nothing.
gobbledygook.
Yeah, exactly. But to me, when I read that, I didn't actually read it. I listened to it. I listened to it like hundreds of times. And over that course of that few months or however, I don't even know how long it was, so much crazy information. And the weirdest thing was before any of this started, um, I had a dream, a very vivid dream, because I'm not like a big dreamer, but I've had this happen a few times um, before, and I don't know about recently, but a few times. But I had this dream, so vivid. I was like 18 or 19, and I had just arrived in Spain before I started with all the meditating and stuff. And I washed up on this beach, and there was this massive wall of hieroglyphics, and there was an Anubis there, the dog-headed man, and he was like trying to teach me the hieroglyphics, and I couldn't understand what he was saying. And then I started going on all these things, but I've had a number of extremely vivid, very mystical type of dreams. But it was only at times before I was actually pursuing, when I was still like, nah, that's all mumbo jumbo because of the way that I'd been introduced to it and the people I'd seen doing it, and the sort of energy that had been surrounding it, and all the very muddy thinking, and people just being like, yeah, I know everything and I'm so great, you know. But yeah, very some extremely prophetic dreams. And it's funny because it was Thoth later on. That's if that I didn't know he had a dog head when I was involved in I might go back to it tonight, even that emerald tablets, because I had these intense visions, you know, like it felt like I was the bird and I was flying around with the fucking face on, and it was crazy.
Right.
Super intense energy information download. But the interesting thing as well is at the end, the last couple of chapters, they describes the duat, which is, I guess, this is the thing, is that that's um, the Egyptian afterlife, but it's really, I don't know what you would call it. I don't know how to put it in all these astral and stuff, because Rudolf Steiner is the one to go to for all that stuff about all the different layers, because he, again, I think he was a Rosicrucian, but it's a process to get still enough and then to get directed enough with your intent to go and actually see these different places. But the interesting thing is that I'd a number of million times listened over to that description of first there's this god and these deities and surrounded by that, and then when I was learning internal alchemy, my teacher taught me, he talked about the world of the Tao, the Taoist version of that, exactly the same thing, exactly the same thing.
Right.
Also, it's the same thing as in the Tibetan Book of the Dead, and it's the same theory. I don't know what it is. I think it's the in
Talking about the same
between,
space.
the same space with the same entities with different names, but in the same positions with the same characteristics and stuff.
Right. Yeah. And so these really vivid dreams that you have, were they have you had astral projections? Have you left the body knowingly?
I don't know if I have. I don't know how. Like, I'm not sure if what it is astral projection so much, but I've have. I mean, all the time. I'm not. I don't know if it's. I don't know, because I don't know how vivid these states are with astral projection and stuff. But yeah, like in terms of visions and all sorts, in very regularly. Yeah, I've had a lot of visions, a lot of visions, um,
And
and
what are the visions of, and how clear are they?
um. hmm. Well, I can describe this. I can describe the dreams, like that dream I told you, and then the next most significant one was, I was crazy again. It was so significant, the timing and everything, because it was when I was studying philosophy, and I'd gone to China to visit my mother, who'd just been diagnosed with cancer. She was working at Huawei, and then it was insane. The first night I arrived there, it was like a long flight, and that night in that sleep, it was like there was this booming voice, and it was saying, it's like all space and time are connected. Indra's net, and it was like I'd never heard of this before, and it was like all these crystals connected by grids, and it was just this infinite space of all these crystals and stuff, which is a thing. It's in Indian cosmology, and then the next thing is zoom to this place, and it was like Atlanta. Sounds crazy, because I also all this I was like, yo, this is I never looked into any of this stuff. Atlantis is in between Santa Gertrudis and San Mateo, which is near where I live now. It's in Ibiza in Spain. Um, and it showed me this town and this ancient place, and there was this really dark, evil energy around this feminine energy, and I had this. I was like, oh, there's something that needs to be healed before this can be reset. Um, and but it's so weird, because for me, even when I woke up, I was like, well, I know well enough, because I knew well enough to, this is something. But I was like, Atlantis, like, what the fuck is Atlantis? I'd heard of it, you know. I was like, this is ridiculous. um to the point where I just sort of blocked it out of my mind. But also, waking state, I've had a number of these sort of moments where I'm like, sometimes it started with mushrooms. Take mushrooms. I took mushrooms the first time when I was 16 or 15, and the first time I took them, it's like I was just suddenly was like, oh my god, all religion. This is what it's about. I never even looked into religion. My dad is like a staunch atheist, and he studied physics, so I had a very rational way of thinking about things. But I was like, oh my god, this is what Jesus was talking about. This is it. And then after I first heard one thing of Terence McKenna saying, "Ask it a question," it was directly after that dream. I got some mushrooms, the first one with Thoth. And I said, "What is consciousness?" And it was like the first answer was like, "You can't understand consciousness until you understand the scale of it." And that persisted. That was I was meditating on that and thinking about that for ages. And but yeah, and then the next most interesting thing was, oh, the scale. Yeah, the scale. The first time I took LSD, it's there. I don't care if it's on drugs because it's a fucking real thing. I was like, I got this thing. It was like I've never had anything like it since. This like super cartoony, but like this thing of like it was, I can't remember exactly, but I remember the meaning of it. It was like this little man shrinking down, and then you zoom in, and it shrinks, and like to show like, oh, this is now you, but you can be this big, and you can be this big, and it's just a matter of perspective. I was like,
Yeah.
oh, that's crazy. Um, and then another one, all this stuff I've put in a book. It's not really a book; it's a short text, but it's like with all these key important bits. I think what it is how to expand your mind. Because I heard actually this guy, he's a ayahuasca shaman, and he's just starting this thing called the mystery school, but it doesn't matter. But what he was talking about is that the shamans have this thing of they call them skills of consciousness where you have, and he saw, I didn't really listen to much, but he said scale, and one of them is learning about scale. And I was like, oh, this is a thing. This is how you expand your consciousness so that you can perceive the larger dimensions and have some proper information out there. Um, so it's not just imagination. And this other one, yeah, zooming in, it was a continuation of the scale. These were all like years apart. I would love for this to happen again. Maybe it will after this conversation. Um, is I was zooming into all the cells and stuff, and then zooming all the way through, and everything was. And then I went through the cells in my hand. I was lying in bed, and and then I was in space, and I was like, oh yeah, sure, that's how it works, like a fractal. A fractal generator is a really good example of that. You see the pattern, and then it's nothing, and then a pattern, and it's nothing, and it's infinite. But then at the bottom of it, or at some point, I was like, oh, all these cells. It was again, it wasn't. Might have been the booming voice at that point as well, and it was like the only the only way for us to be conscious is that all these things have to have consciousness of each other. So the prerequisite for all consciousness to exist is that the smallest things have to at least be aware of themselves so that they don't bump into each other, so that they know. And this is like the principle of like cells differentiation. Like if you look at a cell, it has a cell wall and it does certain things in there and it's conscious. I was like, oh, that's super interesting. Another thing, it's like infinite in all directions and everything's consciousness. But this was all seen as clearly vision. Um, but it was like, oh yeah, it's self-evident because you have a logic of how reality works by walking around all the time. And when you see forms that, even though they're I don't know, you call it astral or whatever it is, but you see that it makes sense. That's true knowledge, I think. And I think this is what like you're saying with the people eating mushrooms and stuff. It's true knowledge. It's the thing of honing your judgment enough that you can make sense of the information. Things come to you like that. um God, and I think, I mean, I kind of have
So,
visions all the time.
so these are the experiences. Are their visions or their dreams? Are they?
No, the dream was, I think, is there another dream? The dream was
So the ones you were
Indra's
speaking about,
net.
they just visions as you're lying on your bed, and
Yeah, this isn't the dream. This is sort of like before bed. The one with the scale of consciousness thing, that was when I was tripping on mushrooms. Um, the one of them was on LSD, but it's always like I'm lying down, and it's, what it is. I recently, just in the past few weeks, I've started doing this thing where it's like, when you lie down, just when you're about to fall asleep, you get the visions. You start seeing stuff.
yeah,
Things starts coming at you.
in the
It's
dog
at
ear.
that point. Yeah, at that point. At that point.
Right. Interesting.
And I'm trying to think of other ones. And it's funny with the astral beings. And you said the thing about sexual experience. Yes, I had the same thing. I was like, you're like, has anyone had that? Yes, but the fucking, it was so. And I was like, oh, that was weird. That came out of nowhere. There's a Egyptian god woman with a lion's head, and there was this thing. I don't know. It was just some random YouTube like short video. It was like, well, try and go and see what that being has to say. And I was like, all right, boom. And it was like sex. I was like, okay, weird, bizarre.
Right. Yeah. So there's lots of very peculiar experiences that we can have, and going into all different sorts of paradigms and worlds with all different sorts of beings and things like that, and that's why. I've done a spate of videos decrying the veracity of the iconographic Yahweh and Satan. The good
Mm,
and the evil. They're just allegories. They're ideas. Because if you can go
yeah,
around the whole world, you're going to
yeah,
get
yeah, yeah,
different predictions and
yeah, yeah. But
different.
also, Do you know my understanding? I was thinking about it today. My understanding of what these things mean when we talk, because again, like we have to take these books and stuff that we have, this information, and then we have to translate it into our reality. That's the thing where people get it mixed up because we're reading an old book which is written in the context of the way their minds worked back then, and they're talking about demons and angels, but then you have to bring that into today, into your own mind, and say, okay, so where does that exist here? Where do I see that in the world? And what I get is that it's like archetypes. I think Jung, there's like, like, I don't know, it used to happen like when you get really angry and suddenly you become a different person, like this thing that can come out of you. That's
Yeah.
that's what my understanding is, that there's these very characteristic types of mood, personality, energy combinations that we can embody and habit at any time through our will. That so when people say, oh, demonic possession or whatever, it's like these characteristic behavioral patterns are coming through us, and if many people are having that as their underlying thing, then that becomes a force in the world, because everyone's it's unconsciously acting on this like pre-programmed set of values and behaviors. That's this sort of archetypal thing that exists just in our DNA and structure and stuff.
Are you familiar with egregores?
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yes.
So
That's the thing where we create stuff in our consciousness, and then that becomes a real
yeah,
thing.
and so with the amount of human energy directed to a
Yeah,
story of an
yeah,
entity,
yeah.
in time it will make manifest as
Become
something
exactly.
physical. It
Yeah, yeah,
becomes
yeah, yeah,
bigger than life and all this sort of
yeah,
thing. So
yeah, yeah, yeah.
that's what they've done with God and Jesus
Yeah,
and
yeah, yeah,
devil and all
yeah,
this sort of thing.
yeah, yeah.
We see we can see a classic example of the whole Satan thing because throughout the years, we've had all different sorts of authors creating what their idea of the devil is. And Dante is a
Exactly,
classic example,
exactly,
of creating, this horn type beast. But in the Bible, it was never mentioned anything of his attributes. And so, where
exactly.
do people get this stuff from? So, what we've done throughout all these years, and you see what I'm trying to instill in my viewers and I do come pretty deep lots of times by I would say things like this. Look, what we have to do is we have to realize that the cosmos is evolving, consciousness is evolving, and we're
Exactly,
leaving everything behind, and it's all becoming obsolete. And so when we look at
exactly,
the fictions of 2,000 years ago, goodness me, where would we ever cling on to anything that we did
exactly,
2,000 years ago? It's all dead. Now we bring it
exactly.
forward into our present state, and like you just said, we look
Yeah,
for these metaphors in our present
exactly,
work.
exactly,
What we'll see is, you see, because of all the energy being brought from those old days, it's like a snowball. It's gone so massive, and it's entered into so many people's psyche, and the psyche has projected it back onto the cosmos. Now it's a massive, looming, terrifying thing of God's wrath
exactly.
and the devil, and so that's what they've done. They're egregores, and
Yeah, yeah,
but
yeah, yeah, yeah. But that's
there's many
very much
people.
like Jung, the collective unconscious. It's like it is, but it's a thing. It's like we all have this underlying, and it. Do you know what's very interesting? After I think this what started around 2016. I don't know, but this thing is happening where the there was there used to be common sense. I used to be able to go around and think, oh, I can just sort of trust that people know what's up. They can do the right thing, be generally all right. That's just like now just shattered. It's like everyone lives like, I don't know, maybe it's because of the way that I don't know, but like everyone's in their own little world. It's like the whole uh collective our collective unconscious is like split now, and it needs reorganizing,
It's
restructuring.
entirely fragmented,
Yeah,
and
yeah, totally.
it's going to get worse and worse and worse. The
Mm,
human psyche is fragmenting because
exactly.
in very recent times, we have been privy to such a massive inundation of information that everybody's
Exactly.
minds have just gone fucking wild.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
and yeah,
not necessarily even thinking people's. You see, thinking people's minds, they've expanded at a massive rate,
yeah,
whereby
yeah.
the automaton, their minds haven't expanded, but they've latched on to these ideas that they've heard, and
Exactly.
collectively, there's a lot of them, so they give these things a lot of energy, and so what I'm going to be speaking about in my next videos is that we really are going to have to start reckoning with the vast difference of human consciousness, because
Mm.
what they're trying to say to us is everybody's all the same, and put us all in the melting pot, and there's no difference, and bring us all down to one festering, fucking bubbling cesspool. And the fact is, the human consciousness isn't anything like that. We've had all
Oh
these brilliant people
God.
forever, and there's still lots of brilliant people today, and they're terrified of the brilliant
Yeah,
people today.
of
Um,
course.
and
Because
so
we're here to lead the way in the confused masses. That's
yeah, I
why
mean,
we
they want to lead the way, but they're not going to be able to do it with all these
because
brilliant people around, and so they've
no,
got their
exactly.
work cut out. But you see, when you look, if we don't take into consideration, you see, science very very recently are starting to take into consideration consciousness, i.e., double slit experiments. It's only been about for 120 years, but it was shunned for many many years. But even now, our greatest theoretical physicists and quantum physicists are speaking about very, very wild things like the simulation theory, like the many worlds theory. And, they're trying to work out how can we break the paradox in Schrodinger's cat?
Yeah.
How can we not make that so absurd? Because it can't both be dead and alive. But that's just a level of consciousness. It can be in a paradoxical world, in a
Mm.
paradoxical cosmos, because we are in a paradox. But what the physicists are trying to do now, they're trying to come up with new ideas. And the new idea they've come up with is the many world theory, which alleviates the pressure of the absurdity of the cat being dead and alive. What they're saying now is no. The cat is either dead or
There's just
alive
two worlds now. We made
in
two
their
worlds.
own world. They go into
Yeah,
other worlds, and then when
exactly.
you have
That's how,
these
guys, we
people,
got it. There's two different worlds.
no, there's billions and billions and trillions of
Yeah,
different worlds.
I know. It's hilarious.
This is the whole absurdity. So what they've done is that they've been so frustrated with one level of absurdity, and so they've created another one, which is billions of times more absurd.
Yeah, exactly. But also, this is one thing that about university. They're just trying to hold on to their fucking jobs, and like, fair enough. It's life. You got a job, and like, but the problem is if your job is based on the veracity of your claims, and then when it turns out that everything you've been saying is totally wrong, which is guaranteed to happen by the nature of scientific inquiry, it's gonna happen. And I don't know why people aren't just like scientists, like people who go on things and we're so certain that that's how they get paid to sound like an
Yeah,
expert, and people are like,
yeah.
oh, okay, so they can go
To
on their
have
day for like two
confidence,
weeks
because
and think, oh, that's interesting.
yeah, if
But
you don't
the
project your level of confidence, then nobody's gonna,
yeah,
have any
do you know?
belief or
Yeah,
faith in it. You have to be so assertive about all these things. But I'm always saying, look, the major thing that all these scientists have never ever looked into is the thing that's looking at all these particles, and the thing
exactly,
that's trying to work everything out. They haven't
exactly.
even worked out that fucking thing, and
Yeah,
so
no.
it's so
Do,
preposterous.
do you know one? This is exactly what I've got written. Is I'm not. I guess it's a book. It's something. All these points because that was my major thing that I was working on. I was like, why is this so wrong? Why is it so wrong? What is it that they're not seeing? But I thought there's one funny little thing that I noticed, which is so ironic that it's and for the fact, do you know what it is? Is that well, first, it's the whole career thing. But scientists, people who study science, should be forced first to study philosophy. We're in the problem of metaphysics right now.
Yeah.
The thing is like um, as soon as you go from a fact, I've just seen that happen. That's being confirmed as a piece of evidence to creating an explanation for that. You're going into metaphysics,
Excuse
and
me,
that's
I was under the
philosophy.
impression that to get a PhD, you have to have studied philosophy as well.
Yeah, but it's probably like one course because think about it this way. Just think about this, right? Okay, there's this statement which is to me it seems so stupid, and I was like, why is this so stupid? Why is it dumb? Okay, consciousness. They say the neuroscience consciousness is just a persistent illusion, and I'm like, it sounds so retarded, and I'm like, what? And then I'm like trying to figure out why it sounds wrong. Get this. Think about what the definition of a term illusion means. That means that something has been perceived, but for some reason it's been misperceived. What's the prerequisite for something to be perceived at all? Consciousness. So saying that consciousness is an illusion is a self-contradictory statement. You're saying that the thing that you need to even, the thing that would be required to create an illusion, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So there's not, it's a self-contradictory statement. And the fact that the guys who are on, that we know the most about the brain and the most about consciousness, and they can't even make that that simple, logical, they can't spot that. That's a
No.
problem. That's a
Yeah.
fucking problem.
Yeah, because they're not versed in philosophy, and they
Or
can't see
thinking
the
in general.
contradiction.
They're not looking for the information. It's a job.
Yeah.
And I get it because I've been in that space where they're looking for their discovery so they can go on their rounds and they can do their book tours and stuff. They need
So,
one discovery, this fact, and they go and hammer that in there and they hold on until they can retire
yeah,
or
so they
hope it
need to
doesn't
give
get disproven.
something. They need to
Yeah,
give
yeah, yeah,
the media something. And so, whenever
yeah.
we listen to Mikhail Kaku, he
Oh
has
yeah.
an opening line, and every single conversation I've ever heard him do when he's standing on the stage is, "We physicists think." And then he goes on to say this, that, and the other. And then the tabloids grab hold of what the main body of what
Yeah,
he's about, and
exactly.
they go, Mikhail Kaku says that there's aliens on Mars. And
Exactly.
Mikhail Kaku said, we think this is possibility that there could be life on Mars. Then all of a sudden it ends up aliens on Mars because, well, it must be an alien because it's not terrestrial. So it
Yeah.
is an alien. And because he said we think, well, they forget about the thinking bit. No, that's not important, because if we just have an idea, no. They seem to lose that abstraction. They can't or don't want to, because it's not sensationalizing.
Exactly. Exactly. And also, do you know what it is?
They've
I was
got
just
and so then, of course, they
yeah.
plaster it over the tabloids, and all the idiots think it's true. And
Yeah.
so that's what's in their consciousness, when in actual fact, nothing is
It's
even
true.
acknowledged about
Yeah,
it.
no, because really, like, if someone asks you, were to ask a straight up question at these people, the answer would always be, well, it depends. And no one wants to hear that. But I thought what was interesting is that I think loads of this is rooted in the fact that it's the authority structure. We're basically, everyone's basically trained for rules. And a rule, this is the greatest thing. If you haven't read On Truth and Lies in a Non-Moral Sense by Nietzsche, read it. It's really short. It's an essay and it's awesome. It's like basically the source of all post-structural philosophy, basically the splitting apart of this thing. But what he's basically saying is that as soon as you every time you hear someone say something is true, categorically true, go and look at what moral or prescription is attached to that. Because as soon as you say that something's true, that means that you should do something. So, point being, this idea of absolute truth is a prerequisite for any form of authority. Any form of absolute. We live in a world with is an absolute authority, which is illusory. The idea that there's somebody who should be listened to just because they're that person. Like, you listen to a doctor because he has the knowledge, and so you go to a doctor and you trust him and you say, all right, so what's going on? And the doctor says you should do this. I have this information. You should do this. You say, okay. But an absolute authority, it doesn't. It's a mental trick, and it's based on the idea of these absolute truths, which is where the scientist plays a role. And what Nietzsche's point was that the science. You should read Nietzsche. He's like, you're like a. Have you ever read Nietzsche's? He's like,
Yeah, I've
he's the
read
best. He was, yeah, yeah, but
several
he's
of his books.
beyond good and evil and stuff. He's like,
Yeah, Beyond Good and
what he's
Evil,
saying is
First
that we
Take the Earth
scientists,
and stuff.
he has one of the things is we scientists, and this was 1890 or something. He's like,
Yeah,
we scientists are so great and so glorious. But what he's saying is that, but this what has happened in reality is that the scientific revolution, whatever, and they started finding truths, and then they were pointing out and finding holes in the absolute authority of the church. So the authority structure jumped onto the scientific. And they're now giving the absolute answers, and it's just these things that people, and it's a training mechanism. So that people watching these, and we all know because we've been there. I've been there, and I still do it. Okay, like, it's just an automatic thing. You say, oh, that's true, and then you start acting on it. It's like a training program where all these, and that's where the scientist role plays. That's why they get so much money, because the guy goes and asks them, okay, so what's up with this? And then they give a straight answer, give a direct answer. This is the answer, and then people are like, okay, then we'll go and do that. And then you just manipulate what the facts are, and then people will do whatever whoever is giving the money.
Yeah, so basically, when the scientists come up with this is true, it's just basically like a hand pointing in a direction, with like aliens on Mars, go this way. And so
Yeah, exactly.
everybody
Yeah,
stops
yeah,
going anywhere else, and they
yeah,
follow
yeah,
this
yeah,
narrow parameter of
yeah,
trajectory. And of
yeah,
course, it's a road to ruin because it's a cul-de-sac, and they're going to end up
yeah,
having
yeah.
to come
But
back ultimately, and
exactly.
then go off on a billion other tangents.
Yeah, and the idea of any certain truth that comes through the form of language is illusory. That's the thing, is that language by its nature is fixed, but reality by its nature is constantly changing. Our experience of reality is always growing. So really,
Well,
you know, it's
language
interesting.
is also constantly changing as well.
Yeah. But
Words
the meaning,
morph
our
into other
idea,
words.
yeah. But our idea of the meaning of a word, we get a definition. We have that idea that that's a meaningful thing, and so we
Yeah, but
create. It's like,
if you only have to look at gay in the 60s, and that would
oh
just be
yeah.
happy.
Of course.
Now,
But I just
suddenly,
mean like in
it's
the,
got sexual connotations, and so
I just
words,
mean like in the
they're
moment.
morphing and
Yeah.
changing. You know,
Of course. But it's part of how these things, these collective issues happen. Is that if we're not looking at the tendency that evolves, if we're not, our minds are not trained on the actual, what is that getting at? If we're not asking what is that getting at, we get into this space of like, oh, this means this, and we're going to do that instead. Um, yeah, but you know what's interesting is that ancient Greek language, all the nouns are based in a verb. They are adaptations of verbs. They are implying a doing, which is a temporal thing. Whereas
right?
our language is very atemporal. It's graphic. It's spatial. This is to explain where I'm getting this from. It would take a really long time, but it's from Henri Bergson. I would read him if I were you.
Right.
He was in the 1900s. He got totally eclipsed by the war, but
Yeah.
point his point is he's got a series of books. First with the nature of time, then the nature of life, and all this stuff, and it's very accurate because it comes from what he calls the practice of metaphysics, which is stilling your mind, observing reality, try and explain.
Mm.
And the big point is that time and space are different, and it's I mean, he went and criticized Einstein, and his points are very true. Like, and there's a physicist called Arthur Young who actually invented the helicopter, the way the helicopter flies. But he took that on board and added this into the atomic theory, because if you know, it's Zeno's paradox. It goes back a long time. If time is made of individual points that are infinitely regressible, then there's no movement. So there has to account for a move. Time is it endures. He calls it duration. It goes, has a
Yeah.
length. So you can't actually explain it in terms of single individual units. There has to be some way of doing that. And it's very, when I read it, I was like, how it's taken a, but then if you look at what Arthur Young did with it, which was to make the growth cycle of the electron, which is very interesting, phases of growth cycle. And which was so interesting is that that's what the Taoist, this is the Taoist, this is their way of understanding things, is that it's a cycle. It's a sequential cycle of phases, and that's how the I Ching works, and that's how you like the seasons in a year. 1 year is one revolution, but it comes through a series of characteristic seasons that each has a certain characteristic, and that and you can then use that as a way to look at how life evolves over time.
Hmm. When I get to thinking about uh, time and space, um, I'm kind of like, well, there can't be one without the other. That's
Yeah.
why Einstein's, ultimately resigned himself to time space, calling it time space.
Hmm.
And so, if you have something which is time space, then because you've got time and space, they're absolutely indistinguishable and contained, and
Mm.
everything is within time space. And then when you start to create some material matter
Mm.
in the time and space, then it gets very confusing. I don't know. You look at that and you think, well, how are these things actually making manifest? Because they're actually making manifest out of nothing. So if they're actually making
Thoughts.
manifest out of nothing, then there is no time and space, and so we get
Mm.
into a deep paradox. And it's kind of like, well, there can't actually be any physical matter here then,
No,
and
no,
there
no,
isn't.
no.
And
That's. I
so
mean,
it starts to
that
fuck with
that's.
your head.
But yeah, but that's why I find it's so interesting that this is in all the old ancient beliefs. There's the void. It's mind. You know, it's very intuitively understandable. um, we think of something. Like I was thinking, like, how is a child born? This is like a very a good version of manifestation. We have a thought of attraction that creates behavior, and then that creates a thing. You know, thought first, then action, then things.
Well, I mean, in simple terms, if we look at, say, like somebody who has an idea about a building, and they've got this idea in their mind's eye, and they can
Yeah,
be very
yeah,
graphic, they can see it, and they can design it, and it's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
wonderful. And then they go rushing to an architect and they explain very, very graphically what this building looks like. And the architect, what goes
Exactly,
like this, and then the person goes, no, no, a little bit longer here, a little bit shorter there, this and the other. And then this thought is manifested into
exactly,
a three-dimensional drawing, and then
exactly.
this guy will take this architect's three-dimensional drawing to an engineer and say,
Hmm.
put your science in here so it stands up and it doesn't
Exactly,
blow down. So then they'll
exactly,
put their ideas into it, and then you go to a builder and then you say, can you build this in this material, that material, and then they will put
exactly,
more ideas. So what you've got a conglomerate of ideas. You don't
exactly,
actually
exactly.
have any physical
And
matter.
it's and this is philosophy. This is what people are missing, is just simple, plain, common sense thinking. How do things come to be? We have examples of it everywhere, and it's simple. And that's when we're going to all this abstract stuff in mathematics. If it's not according to what we see in, and they'll say, well, I don't know. Again, I don't know, but there's this is how things appear to work. And this is, and then you go back to the really ancient beliefs, and that's what they say. That's what they believe too. And I think it's just a matter of making sense of it in our modern way. If that's amenable to reality, if it's not amenable to reality, then we have to question what the motivation is behind these structures of beliefs.
Yeah, here's the thing. If I came to you and I said, uh, I just met a mutual acquaintance or something, or yeah, let's just say a mutual acquaintance, and there was somebody else with this acquaintance who we both knew. So we're considering that we're dealing with a physical reality. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, this person, he's an absolute monster. And all of a sudden, you've created an idea of a monster.
Mm-hmm.
And you're thinking, what sort of monster? Is he very threatening, very intimidating? And I could say, he's so violent and potentially threatening, feels like evil. All of a sudden, you've built all that up, and what
Exactly.
I'm doing is I'm just describing some words, and then you are actually creating this three-dimensional figure within your mind's eye,
Exactly.
and you're
Yeah.
creating emotions which go with it. And
Mm-hmm.
what have I done? I've just said what God is supposed to have said in the beginning. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was good, and let there be this and let there be that, and that's
Mm-hmm.
all we've done here. And so
Yeah.
we say, let there be these things, and let there be computers, and let there be everything, and then through a general consensus, we create the concepts, and the concept becomes an egregoric type reality.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
But that's how it works. I mean, that's how things appear to work just by nature. And that's also accounted. That's like the most ancient texts all say the same thing. Like this is the basic. Like this is what Western thinking has problems with. There, those problems have been solved. But the thing is that I didn't realize, because of just trusting the way that we all learn, is that like I felt like, oh, this is the most advanced form of thinking, but we do have advanced technology, but also we're just building off the back of older civilizations. It's like Chinese invented gunpowder, Chinese invented the compass, Chinese invented all these things. Most of our beliefs come from ancient Greece, all this stuff. But the thing is, like in India, China, Greece, ancient Greece came from the Phoenicians and stuff. They have been focusing on these problems for thousands of years. Like we've got like since say the end of the Dark Ages, 500 years. That this is the extent of our thinking. Like it's a very immature thinking. It's like we have very advanced technology, but because we've had an uninterrupted stream of human civilization, and we've just taken bits from that. It's like we didn't invent the boat, we didn't invent all this stuff. We're at the very top of it. It's like, and we discovered oil and things like, what's crazy is like my dad told me the other day, the semiconductor. Is this thing that just totally changed everything in our ability to have technology? But it was an accidental discovery. It wasn't some theory that like, oh, this should be possible. Technically, it should have been impossible. So it's like,
Mm.
okay, so physics takes claim. Well, I don't know if they do directly, but I tend to think my general idea is that that's because of our understanding of physics. But the fact is that physics would have told that was impossible. If you'd just been trying to theorize it, you never would have found it, and that's what made so many things possible. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, so. what does that say? You know?
Well, when we look at physics, they don't know what electromagnetism is. They don't know what gravity is.
No.
They don't
And
know what
also
matter is.
by the thing is by the scientific, by the actual, if you follow to the letter what you're supposed to do in science, you cannot make those claims like that. This was David Hume's point right at the beginning of the scientific revolution. He's like, look, there's two ways you can know things are true: by uh, relations of ideas. You define terms, and then that creates truths. You know, like that's
Mhm.
like our logic. And then by matters of experience or matters of facts or facts of experience. I don't know what he called it, but it's like, so we can go and see, oh, there's a bird there today. Oh, the bird's there again. Oh, the bird's there again. You can say, yes, the bird has been there for the past 500 days. Oh, it probably didn't live that long. Yeah, it lives that long. 500 days, the bird's been there. You could say that. When you go and then say, no, the bird lives in that tree, that's a claim that's outside of confirmable by the scientific method. And this is where we're in the realm of all these theorizing about this is the reason for that. It's metaphysics. It's metaphysics.
Yeah.
It's not actually confirmable by what we call what's the word? Empiricism. It's not empirical.
Yeah.
It's actually not. It's a extrapolation, and that we should always say we can't know for sure.
Yeah,
And
because
and
we're living in the metaphysical world, which they call
yeah,
physical, and it's kind of
yeah,
like, well, it's not physical because your own physicists, your own quantum physicists, tell you that there's no physical matter here, so it
yeah,
is actually metaphysical, and
yeah,
yet they insist that it's physical. So
mm,
everybody is so wrapped up in the paradox, and it really is bizarre when you get involved in all this stuff to the level, and you look at scientists, and this is why I'm always banging on about people how they are infinitely stupid, and people don't want to hear that. But I've read so many intelligent accounts of people saying the same thing for the same reasons and varying reasons. When I listen to the scientific debates, we've got the Brian Greens, we've got Neil deGrasse Tyson, we've got Simon Gates, we've got um, all different sorts of people. Like there's a super duper physicist called Max something. He's on all the talk shows. He's got a gap in his
mm.
teeth, black hair. Um,
I
uh,
don't know. Do you know what it is? There's just something about it. Like, as I can tell from 1 second when someone starts talking, especially usually the people in these sorts of realms, like highly, what's the word? Like involved in the people are involved in the establishment. Um, if I look at them, I can tell immediately if they're just hammering a point or if they're actually someone who's thinking about, is this what's going on? Like so I sort of switch off, like because I can see that their thinking is not able to grasp the idea that they might be wrong, and in that case, then they can't be right.
well, yeah.
That's
Well,
my
I mean,
thought.
the shows I've been watching over many years, we have like Neil deGrasse Tyson holding. He's held this thing for 16 years, and some sort of scientific conference, and they've got all different sorts of scientists on to debate with each other, and also you have the odd philosopher like David Chalmers, and so he in turn gives the floor to a particular physicist, and they speak about their latest work and their theories and this, that, and the other, and then they all start arguing amongst each other, which is correct, and none of them agree with each other, by the way. And then right at the end, so deGrasse Tyson says, "So in 5 minutes, how confident are you in your theory, 1 to 10?" And they go, 3, and then another one will go 2, another one will go 5.5, and so
Mhm.
it's kind of like, well, it's all very, very iffy. Well, yes, it's all iffy. We don't know anything for sure, and so that's where it is. Even with the best
Yeah.
scientists on the world, they'll all tell you that we don't know anything for sure.
But I feel like they say that to hedge the fact that they're always trying to tell people they know the best. That's the weirdest thing. It's this paradox: is that they're not saying that they will always, in this sort of false humility, say, "Oh no, I really don't know." But on the other side, if someone like Terrence Howard comes out with something like that, they're like, "Nope, you're 100% wrong. I know it. You're a lunatic. You're a lunatic." And I'm like,
Yeah,
actually, what he's saying is
yeah.
extraordinarily bizarre, and that's bizarre enough that it might be true. You
Yes.
know,
Well,
like
look, you see, the thing is, when they're all dissing Terence Howard, and they're going, he says 1 and 1 is 2. 1 times 1
yeah,
is 2. But you see what Terence Howard says. He said, look. this table is called a multiplication table,
Mm.
and everything has to be multiplied. If it's going to
Mm.
be,
Oh my God,
I
multiplication. Yeah, 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 of
yes,
course.
if
Yeah,
if it's going to be
multi.
included in this
Yeah,
table, which is termed a
logic.
multiplication
It's
table,
logic.
the
Yeah,
logic tells you that
yeah,
1 times 1 must be more than 1.
yeah. Exactly,
That's
exactly. And
that's why.
also, the crazy thing was when I saw Neil deGrasse Tyson's response to that, and when he was talking about this thing with the weird thing with the squaring
Yeah,
and he's like, yeah, well, guess what? That happens with like 30 numbers, and I'm like, so are we not worried about like, are we? Is this not like something that is like a real serious thing that's considered? Like, why? You know? And he's like, yeah, you're wrong because it's not only two, and I'm like. Yeah, but isn't he not? Is he not right by pointing that out?
but the thing
I
is,
don't know. I'm probably wrong, but
you've
like
got
it's I
brilliant
just was like
people.
mind blowing. Like,
You got brilliant people way back in the day, like Paul Dirac,
mm,
who discovered something absolutely incredible. Forget what it was, but for about 10 years, everybody was up in arms, and all of
yeah,
his peers, I don't know whether it's Schrödinger or Max Planck or all those fraternity at the end of the 1800s,
yeah,
they was all that this is complete nonsense, and it turns out to be true. And
yeah.
so
Do you know?
again, I just say to these people, look,
Yeah,
Terence Howard is an intelligent person. Nobody disputes that.
extremely.
They say that he's just got a bizarre way of looking at this. Well, lots of people who have created Einstein had very bizarre
He
things
worked
about
in a
what he
patent
created.
office. He
Yeah,
worked in
and
a
all
patent
that sort
office.
of stuff. And
The
and
only reason
so
they bomb him is because it worked to build the atom
so
bomb.
up
That's
themselves, and they
yeah.
they will just not concede that somebody can be out there. Even like
That's
Richard Feynman
yeah.
was so out there, and
So
everybody
smart.
hated what he came up
So
with.
smart. And he was
Yeah,
so simple. He made everything so simple because he saw things clearly. But and I think when I look again, you can see it in people. I'm sure you can see it in people. When I look at Terrence Howard, I'm like, whoa! Like when he starts talking about there's you can see like you can just see it in people. There's a certain thing like you were talking about spirit. I don't know what you call it, but like he's coming from another dimension on some level. You know what
he's
I mean?
coming
Like
from another dimension,
yeah,
and
he is. He's here for a reason,
and
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 that
and
reason is to
people,
blow the shit up.
yeah, that's right, and he's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
prolific, and he's so confident, and
And intelligent. Like this
yeah,
thing with the dreams and being able to go in and learn stuff. I'm like, whoa! I wish I was getting that too. You know, like I mean, maybe a little bit, but like that, he's at a very high level of it,
so
whatever it is.
people, you see, but what they always do in the scientific fraternity, because he isn't a scientist, because he doesn't have a
Exactly.
PhD, they're not even going to be listening or reading his
But
papers.
that's why I said fuck it to academia because that's how it works. You know, the funniest thing is like it was just one example where there was this concept called fuck, it doesn't matter what it's called, but it's this idea of like it was like used about marginalized groups of people and how the abject is called the abject because this is all very new in philosophy. And they were like, oh yeah, well this group is made abject by this and this reason, and oh we should feel so bad for them. And I did it. Did a presentation, and I was like, so in Brighton there's tons of homeless people, and I was like, so we're talking about abjection. What about all the homeless people you walk over, drug addicts and homeless people that you walk over on the way to school with scorn? What about those people? Are those abject? I wrote an essay, and she's like, the teacher. She was like, you can't make these claims without citing any references or without citing enough references. And I'm like, you can't cite the references because they don't exist. This is a new
Yeah,
idea. I just pointed
yeah,
something out. How do you account for that in the academics? You can't. You can't
yeah.
because it's a authority structure, and that was again. I was studying critical theory where they're talking about taking down the authority structure, and in my head I was like, look, you are teaching us critical theory while applying an authority structure to it. So this is a contradiction in terms. You know, I can't be like I'm not. This is. I loved it. I feel like that. I would love to have taught philosophy with like that sort of thing. But
So
it was.
did you study postmodernism in
I
relation to
did.
that?
I
Yeah,
went
yeah,
into post structuralism and all that, but I went deep into everything because I just applied myself to it because I wanted to know. I didn't just do the coursework. That was just like here are some little tips, and there were some people who were smart who had interesting lectures, but I went all into it because there's some very interesting stuff in there. But
yeah.
all the stuff that gets popularized is just crap. It's silly. It's just they're misunderstanding the core ideas, which are very interesting, and they're just
Yeah.
using it for political ends to confuse people and separate people to make them more controllable. That's what's going on, and so everyone gets on a high horse like and they don't see what really they're looking at. It's just like a big illusion.
Yes. So I don't. How many videos would you say that you've watched of mine?
Quite a few.
Yeah.
I don't know though. I don't know, but I watch. I only started watching in God, like a couple of months ago. But I
Right.
catch it. I catch a lot of them. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So would you say 10, 20, 30, or more?
Well, you post a lot of videos, so probably more. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're very
Okay. So
prolific on it.
I
It's awesome. Yeah.
just so I get an idea of what you perceive from my sort of outlook. Lots of times I speak about having a postmodernist slant, and
Yeah, 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 yeah. Me too.
everybody,
100%.
right? Everybody
I'm
that's a
100%. We all
physicalist,
are. If
right?
you oh, yeah, of course. Yeah, because that's like
Look,
19th
Jordan
century.
Peterson absolutely hates with a vengeance the
He hasn't
postmodernists.
read it. He hasn't read it. He hasn't taken the time
Well,
to
he
understand
reckons
what he's talking
he's read
about.
Foucault and he's read
Yeah,
Derrida.
yeah,
Uh,
he's read it, but he didn't get it. He didn't see the point of it. He just got confused because they use all these crazy words, but because they're trying to express something different.
yeah,
Like
well,
Derrida is hard to read. No, not Derrida. Sorry, Deleuze. That's the one you want to read. It's very difficult to read because it's talking about the nature of the becoming of reality. That's what he's talking about. Derrida is just a bit silly. Like he's just doing. They're playing word games. He's just playing word games.
right.
Foucault was just basically doing what Nietzsche did. Foucault was just tracing the genealogy of words, but all they're doing is they're breaking down the idea of this fixed idea of language. And they all were inspired by Bergson. That's why I went to Bergson, because I was like, oh, this is where they're getting it all from. Nietzsche and Bergson is all of postmodern philosophy, except for Deleuze, who's another level, and then everything else is just a bunch of nonsense. But I don't know because I haven't kept up with it. I don't know if there's anyone touching that, but Deleuze is crazy. And very difficult to read because of the words he uses. But if you use your capacity to read between the lines and look at the forms that he's creating, you're like, oh, this is a description of how forms come into being. He's talking about layers of reality, and like we're talking about this, what does he call it, the plane of immanence and the plane of manifestation and all this stuff. And like people, again, because everyone grasps onto a little bit and they use it for their career because this is new stuff, so they're all trying to be a teacher who teaches this. Oh, I got this new slant on Deleuze. But he certain true thinkers, were trying to do something with words to carry on the torch.
So, in brief, then, how do these people say that forms come into manifestation?
Deleuze is talking about what we were just talking about. It's in the mind or desire. They use the idea of desire, but
Coming
it's
out
the
of
intent. He's
language,
talking about
creating
intent,
concepts.
but the
Uh,
intent that there's this is the picture that I get. First, it's like it starts with Bergson's idea of time, which is in duration, but that text is just a way of breaking us out of seeing language as being fixed and true, and breaking into a way which is coming from Nietzsche and Schopenhauer of seeing forces that accrue through time. This is like what we're talking about with like these spirits and stuff. There are certain forces that manifest, that are continuing. We are just bodies that are like making a part of this larger force that is persisting in time, that you can see the characteristics of. In Deleuze, in terms of what he's saying about how things come into form, is that there's an intent. He calls it desire, but it's like Schopenhauer's will and Nietzsche's will. But again, they all do it a little bit differently. But there's an intent in the ideas. There's a meta, and because he can't say this, because in France they're so fucking traditional and all this shit. He could never, like, they started saying, "Oh, I think Bergson's gone crazy because is he talking about God?" That's what they said. But he was the most famous. He was the first celebrity intellectual ever, and this was in a time where people were still smart and not all caught up in woo woo stuff. But anyway, the basic idea is that there's an intent, and in consciousness, that creates a form that doesn't have a material form, that gets another layer of, like you were talking about, and more ideas that slowly manifest in reality, that
so
starts as an
a will
intent,
and
like a will.
representation, then
Yeah,
Schopenhauer.
yeah, yeah. Like it starts from Schopenhauer. Schopenhauer was Nietzsche, and then Nietzsche very much influenced Bergson, and all that postmodern stuff basically comes out of Nietzsche and Bergson. Are two things to understand how postmodernism could, but it's just a way of breaking out of this dogmatic view that came from science, because
Yeah.
the way that philosophy came to the West was from religion, dogmatism. Then they added Aristotle into that, which started with philosophy, but they kept this dogmatic idea of what the meaning is. And so that's sort of been broken away from in what you get in postmodernism, where you get this. It's a different way of situating yourself in reality. And it's just reading between the lines. It's just certain people have that when you're saying, you're like, what are they talking about? And seeing this, oh, this thing is still going on. Like the authority structures and all this stuff. It has a different face, but it operates by the same um, the same what's that word? Protocols. You know, like
Right.
there's these. Yeah, yeah,
So when we look then at Nietzsche, sorry, not Nietzsche, Plato with his
yeah,
ideas and his forms,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
saying that there's nothing actually here in
Mm,
reality. There's only
mm,
ideas and
yeah.
forms.
But
You see, all
Plato
these
was a
philosophers,
mystic. He was initiated in apparently in Egypt. He
right?
went
Yes,
traveled to
he spent
Egypt,
a
and
lot of
so was
time.
Pythagoras, and so was
Yeah,
Pythagoras, who were these absolutely millennial changing of millenniums worth of the amount of truth or reality that was in their documents, you know, like and what's his name, Burke, I think, Deleuze, we're talking about postmodernism, is like sort of like a Neoplatonist. Like he gets, you know, because they do this stuff, and this is one thing, like in philosophy they're like, oh well, he's a Neoplatonist, like saying that's wrong because oh, we've proven Plato wrong. They think like again, they create these labels to put on a set of ideas that then gives you the authority, the it's which is basically punishment. It's like, you know, the idea of punishment. You label someone as wrong, and then that means that you do your punishment. In philosophy, that means you don't listen to him. So that was a side point. But yes, Plato. Yeah, interesting. And that all comes from mysticism. Or
so
and we say this with a like mysticism has a bad name, but this is the core teachings that go back like 10,000 years, which are
yeah,
societies that were extremely advanced, clearly, with the fucking pyramids and all
yes.
this crazy stuff that
So
we.
they were all very, very heavily steeped in mysticism, and
Yeah,
we
but
have to come back to that. But you
yeah, yeah,
see,
but that's needs training. That needs intellectual training on the individual, which is all the meditation and stuff, to be able to get to those levels of stillness and then ability to use your intent in the still places, like direct your consciousness at different things and construct things and see what's going on. But it's all training that comes from, you know, meditation is the beginning of that, and all this stuff. That's what they're
yeah.
training for.
So with meditation, when I started meditation, I considered that I was going to go and do a hypnotherapy course,
Mm,
and I did this course,
mm,
and uh, prior to going to the course, which was a year long, it was one day. Every month, and then you had an assignment of 5,000 words each month, and so I'd read as many books as I can get my hands on, like 13 books on hypnosis. And
mm.
so I was putting myself under hypnosis before I even went to the class.
Yeah,
Now,
yeah, yeah. You don't.
when,
Yeah, of course. You.
of course, hypnosis is very, very similar to meditation. And
It's what
so
it
when
is.
you get into this state of hypnosis, you're in the theta realm, that's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
meditation. So
Yeah,
then
that's what it is.
I learned how to meditate from Maheshi Yogi,
Mm,
you know, the Beetle guru. And
mm.
then as soon as I started to meditate, I took to it like a duck to water. And
Yeah,
every time I meditated, I would open my eyes with 1,000 downloads. And
yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
been going on ever
That's
since for
how.
this past
Yeah, yeah,
14
yeah.
years.
That's
So
how
what
it
you were
works.
saying about when you started to meditate, what are you going to do with all this stuff? Yeah, your
Yeah.
consciousness opens up, and then you get downloaded from the ethos, from spirits, or whatever. And so, where I'm sort of going with my videos, I've been going 14 years, you know, and
Yeah,
I
I
started
know. Yeah, yeah.
a long time ago. I traveled a long, long journey, and where I'm getting now is, of course, it's very, very metaphysical, and
Mm,
it's very nihilistic. It's very solipsistic because
mm,
the more I'm looking around, the more I'm investigating, the more I'm really considering what the greatest of thinkers have ever said. There isn't
mm.
an actual fact and never has been any physical reality here.
No.
And it's getting more and more desperate with the likes of Jordan Peterson, because what
Mm,
Jordan Peterson is doing, he's trying to hold the fabric of Maya together by his critical thinking. And
he's battling in his own mind.
yeah, he's battling
That's
in
the
his
thing.
own mind,
He's
and that's
that's
why
what I
he
saw
hates
when I
the
first.
postmodernist, because
Yeah,
the
yeah.
postmodernist can dismantle his life in a fucking instant, and
Exactly,
I
and you
think he's
have to
terrified
you
of that
have to
because
account for that because
I
it's fear that needs to be overcome because he's like at the point of just like he'll like well he ate mushrooms for the first time or something, right? But it's like he's at the point where it opens up. There's this thing that I realize happens is that you go through the you go through the logical phase where you accumulate all this information, and at some point you get to the point where you say, "Fuck it, wait, this is all shit." Like this isn't the words are. I shouldn't be focusing on the words. I have to step away from focusing on the concepts and start looking at the real reality, but that's in the mind, because you construct this really complex image of what's in, and you have a huge reality in your mind, and then you go in and start looking at that, and that's the mystical step. That's the step from and like that's the in India they say logic is the dungeon. Like it's a very useful thing. It's very good to be very logical, but that's the dungeon of a fucking million-story house.
Right.
And the you first construct the world, and then you go somewhere else. And that's why you get all these things where they're talking, like you get the real mystic guys who are like, I don't read books anymore. I don't read books anymore. And stuff like that. But because there's a certain point where it's just you have to realize yourself. It's like you're trying to I think we're always trying to hold on to these. We're trying to hold on to certainties to feel safe in life. Because at some point it feels like the ground's gone under beneath your feet, and in the void. That's the thing. This is one step, and like in Taoism they have 9 steps of this is all they all have the same things of the levels, and as I'm saying now, it's like the levels of understanding, and but there is one point, and you've obviously, I know you've experienced it, is where it's like suddenly it's you know that like the words are just words, and if you when you go into these realms, like there's fear is what keeps you in one state, and then when that's released, then another state opens up, and then you're on a new path, and it's like nothing now, and it's like you're in a new. It's like you go from being the smartest in one thing, and then you're like, oh, I'm the beginning
Yeah,
again,
you've
and
gone out of one
yeah,
dimension into another
yeah, yeah,
dimension of
yeah,
consciousness.
and you start being aware of these other levels. It's like you break, and then suddenly, if I think like that's when you start to probably everyone has this sort of mystical experiences and starts understanding, because you're looking at the events and the things, this really large picture you have of reality, and you're seeing like these tendencies, and those are like spiritual things, like because you're seeing them in your mind, you're seeing this like, oh, this is how things have happened over time, and then you're seeing, oh, this has an intent behind it, this thing has an intent, and that's like, and then you're like, oh, that sounds like an angel or a demon from a book, and then this is the thing of translation, where we need to understand that this is just an errors in translation, in terms of why we're like everyone's getting confused about all this stuff. Everyone's talking about it and this, but there's confusions in understanding what they're talking about, because we're trying to use words that were made when people then that made sense back then. It
Yeah,
doesn't make sense anymore.
yeah. So
But the reality is the same,
we
and the
we
human experience is the same.
we have to rewrite our future now. That's the
Yeah,
thing
yeah,
about
yeah,
it.
yeah.
Let me ask you this, Tom.
Mm,
We've done 1 hour and 45 minutes now. Let's
mm.
say if we go for another 15 or
Yeah,
half an
yeah,
hour.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um,
Sure.
so I want to get your perspective on my perspectives.
Mm,
I want to see because I'm always banging on, trying to get my
mm.
viewers to put comments down and
Yeah, yeah,
give their perspectives, but invariably they don't have any, and
yeah, yeah.
it's shockingly depressing. But every now and again, if I get somebody who's a thinker, then
Mm,
I want to probe them. So
yeah,
when
yeah.
you watch my videos,
Mm.
what's the general consensus, and then pick out some salient points which you disagree with and agree with, so we can speak about those if you don't mind.
Mm. In general, I think you know what's up. That's why we're talking. I wouldn't, because we wouldn't be able to have this conversation if you didn't. This is the thing of, I think personally, I think that if it's true that things that we've been on a similar trajectory in time, in this lifetime. We've been learning the same things at the same time, because it keeps happening. Because I'm like recording like videos, not really recording. I would need to record more, or I will. But like I'll be thinking about something, and I'll start being like, "Oh, I need to record a video," and then you'll say it in the day, and I'm like, "Oh yeah, so we're on the same length of
Right.
these certain understandings." What is there? I mean, no, I think I agree with like 90% of it. I like all of it. I can't really think of things I disagree with. The only thing I would say is that um uh well, just from what religion and all that, no, nothing about religion. Uh No, but I think I don't think I don't think I have even anything to say. I mean, if you ask me a question, I could.
So,
give it a go. But
you
I
see,
can't
what
think. I
I'm always saying,
don't think in
and
those terms. Yeah.
you know, I'm always proclaiming that when I'm saying lots of things, that my logic can't be refuted, and I'm always
Mm.
welcoming people to challenge me to see if my logic can be refuted. So, is there been any times when you've considered listening to my lineage of rational thought that maybe have lost it, been delusional, or anything like that? Or have you seen a pretty solid, logical,
Yeah.
thinking, reasonable person
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. 100%.
that knows where it's at?
Yeah, 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 100%, 100%,
Yeah.
100%. The only thing I would say, because you know what it is, logic is logic. It's logical, it's simple. It's very. Would say that. All right, if talking about the spiritual life, this is one thing that came in the big part from training in the Taoist stuff is it's what's the purpose of our life? To be happy, right? So um, that involves at some point letting go of a lot of things, like not worrying, giving a fuck about what
Yeah,
people
but
say and
just
stuff like
just
that,
just on
about
the
opinions
question
and
now,
all that.
because
Yeah.
is the purpose of life to be happy, or is it to
No,
transcend?
yeah, but that's I mean that in the same way. I mean,
Right.
you the state underlying everything is just peace.
So we
The pure, it's
transcend
just
into the
emptiness.
bliss. We
Yeah, it's
transcend
just emptiness.
into the
Yeah, yeah.
highest. Right.
Yeah, I would just say let go of the stupid people. Just let them go. Like fuck them. Who cares? Doesn't matter. They're irrelevant that's. I only say that for your sake in terms of because that all those thoughts can take you out of that state where you can just sit there and just be in peace. Like that's all. That's the only thing I would even say. Is fuck
Yeah.
them. Fuck everyone. But then that's it. Yeah, yeah. Uh, that's all. That's the only thing that I ever think is like, oh, if you don't need to worry about that. It's like it's because, you know, it's the thing of like logic needs to prove itself. Consciousness doesn't. It just is.
Yeah, but the difficulty is that I've had in my life in recent times, I've had some very powerful spiritual experiences,
Mm.
and they've been religious experiences because they
Mm.
pertained to the Western
Oh, well then
egregores
that's
of God,
yeah, yeah,
Jesus, and Satan,
true. Well then
the
that's
angels.
then that's actually your that's obviously that's a mission is to actually explain that stuff. So
Yeah,
yeah, I mean it's fine. But when I look at you and I was thinking about it, I was like, yeah, but you don't seem to be bothered. You're not bothered by being by negative thoughts about it. So I don't think that like I don't think it even matters. But that's what I mean. Like I don't have anything to even say because I can see that I can see that you're approaching it everything in the right way. That the truth comes to us when we
yeah,
approach it the right way. It's just
yeah.
how it is. And
Uh,
also you approach life in the right way. You go and you get figure it out. You figure things out yourself. And that's all that's I mean
yeah.
yeah, and
So
if
so
and like
so
you're still
that's
peaceful, it doesn't matter. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
That's
That's obviously that's your thing. Like it's come. This has come to you to explain that. That's what happens. I think this is what I've like putting everything together. That's what happens. Why we're here is like we have a certain way of being, and that things are given to us. These things come to us in order for us to express them. Like this crazy shit with these and like you described this stuff where things just work out and things happen and it just like this comes and that comes and it just comes in time. I get exactly the same thing. It's like everything just like happens. Like it's like the day I start I'm thinking about this stuff. This dude comes to me and like gives me all this shit, like literally like things that like out of a film. It's like a fucking movie. I told people who were my friends at the time, and it was like they're like, are you like it's like it was like a fucking like it's like I was like this is too insane to be like and like that's it was a mind opener. I was like this is too insane for me to ignore the fact that this synchronicities and stuff that there is something actually going on here that I could never that my logical mind would not let me perceive until this happened and I was like whoa, this
right,
is
yeah. So when we experience synchronicity, we realize without a shadow of a doubt that this universe is conscious. There is
exactly
some higher intelligence that
yeah
provides us for things when we only have to think about it. So the law of
yeah
attraction, there's a lot in that, and I've had so many experiences about that. And then when we take mushrooms and we have a higher entity putting
oh
us
yeah
right, or
oh
maybe God chastising
yeah
us,
I
or
forgot yeah
angels directing us, and all these sort of things.
yeah
So there's all stuff going on out there. Let me just tell you, just very briefly,
yeah
just a little story
yeah
about how we create our reality.
yeah
I've got a new house that I bought a used wine box, and the dimension is about like this, and it's
Yeah.
perfect for a new squirrel's dray because his other one's too small for next winter because he's fully grown now, and so I need a ladder to attach it to the tree, and
Yeah.
the ladder needs to be about 10 feet long minimum. And so I've been asking the neighbours around, anyone got a ladder? Anyone know anyone with a ladder? No, no, no. And so I've let it go. And then my neighbours have said to me after a week or two, have you got a ladder yet? And I went, no, but I put it out in the universe and it's going to come. Now, of
Yeah.
course, they don't know what the
No, they
fuck I'm
don't.
talking about.
No, no,
Uh,
no. It's so funny.
but
They think you. Yeah.
they just think I'm fucking wacko.
Yeah,
But then
yeah,
I told the fucking idiots
yeah.
today, and they're all like, they don't
Yeah,
even
but
know
that's
what I'm talking about. I'm
no,
in a
but that's
different dimension.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But that's again, that's your thing. That's why you're there.
Yeah.
That I heard someone. That's why we're here. It's to point this
Let me
stuff
let me finish
out.
the
You know, it's
story.
like we're yeah, yeah. Sorry. Yeah,
So,
yeah,
it's been a couple of weeks since I've been desirous to get this ladder, and I just put it out in the universe like you do with the law of
yeah,
attraction, and I forgot about it. And I thought, well, it doesn't, it's not urgent. It doesn't need to come
yeah,
before winter, and so
yeah,
I'm just relaxed about it. So I go out of my apartment and I go onto the road, and I'm walking like 10 yards up the road, and then there's some old guy, and he's struggling with an electric hedge trimmer to cut
yeah,
a very overgrown hedge. And I
yeah,
said to him, I said, you got your work cut out there, bro. And he went,
yeah,
well, yeah, blah, 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 blah. And we started talking. And I said, oh, is your the garden with the one with the huge fir tree in the back? And he said, come and have a look, come and have a look. You know, it's all matey like that. So I thought,
yeah, yeah.
not the
Uh-uh.
sort of thing I do. But I thought, okay, I'll go and have a look. So I
Yeah,
walked up his entry, and I saw he's got all tools piled
yeah,
up against one side, and he's got a 10 foot ladder.
yeah.
And I said to him, I said, "Oh, you got a 10 foot ladder? I'd love to borrow that one day." Yeah, no worries, you borrow anything, mate. You know, come round for a beer one time. This, that, and the other. So anyway, we continued to chat as he showed me around his garden, and then I went back and I told these old sticks here that I've got a ladder, and
Yeah.
it came about because I just stopped and spoke to one guy. And then you see, this is the whole thing about how this thing
That's
works.
how it works.
You speak to
Exactly.
one person, and then all of a sudden, another world opens up.
Yeah, and you think, oh, it's that thing of, oh, I wouldn't normally do this, but I'll go with it.
Yeah, you wouldn't normally do it, and it's kind of like this guy. I could have just walked by. You can't speak to everybody, but
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
there's times when you do speak to people, and when
Mhm.
you do, is for a reason. And so it
Exactly.
was for a very,
Yeah.
very powerful reason. And now I've got my ladder, and like I'm like wonderful. So the next thing I want is I want some sort of natural looking carpet because I want to stick
Mm.
this to the outside to make it look natural when it's up in the
Yeah.
tree. I don't want it to
Yeah.
just look like a box. And so I've put it out in the universe. And
Yeah.
one day I'm going to see someone coming out of his house with a pile of old offcuts of carpet under his arm.
Exactly.
And I'm going to go, can I have a few of those, mate? And that's how it's
Yeah.
going to be. And so
Exactly.
when we are in touch with these synchronicities, they are so amazingly powerful. And I've had so many. We can talk about them on other occasions.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
sure we've got loads of stuff to talk about.
Totally.
Stories as we get to learn each other's experiences. But this cosmos is vastly over and above what 99% of the people think it is. And when
Oh,
you know that, you live in a very strange world.
yeah. That's the thing of certainty. That's what, like, the fear of, the uns it's this thing where people now were needing the certainty, but again, I think this is engineered by
Yeah,
the way that
their
with
need for certainty.
it's the time money issue. It's this, we're on
It's
a
Jordan Peterson
a
all
ticking
over.
clock.
He's like a plague on the
Yeah, yeah.
fucking world,
Yeah,
speaking
yeah.
about the need for certainty.
Yeah, 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 but that's the problem, and we only have this has been, attached to our desire, I mean, our will to survive because of the way that society structures time and money. The way that you've got your month, and you've got your day, and you've got to do so much each day. You get paid per hour, and then you got to build it up. And if you don't get it in time, then you're not going to pay your rent. Oh, I'm going to lose my house. That's engineered 100%. I
Well,
think
it's
that's
all
why it's
broken
that
down
way.
into
Yeah,
AI technology, into
yeah,
bytes, zeros and ones. They
yeah,
want you to
yeah,
live. They're introducing you, they're forcing you, channeling you into being
yeah.
AI.
And like, there's part of me that like thinks like this. I'm like split on whether or not this is so intentional or if it's just like because no, it has to be, because the thing is like it's the initial thought is no, this is the way things have to be because this is how it works. But then the other thought, which comes from like the David Icke side, is like this is totally manufactured. But it's not just David Icke. This is like a big ass idea that's not even fully formed. Like there's a lot of theories about what's really going on. But like if it is manufactured, it's manufactured very well in order to keep people in this state. Because the fact is that everyone there is the sense of wonder. That's that I had one of these moments where it was it was mushroom related, but I wasn't on mushrooms. That I was walking out and there was this insane sunset. Here, sometimes you get these sunsets that are just like mind blowing. And I was looking, and I was feeling this feeling of wonder. And I looked down, and there was like a mushroom growing there. And I had this realization, like that they'd been there all my life, and I kept on popping into them. They just turn up, and they're like offering, like, "Hey, you should try me." Um, but then I realized, like, oh my god, what actually this was before any of that other bit that I told you. This was right before. This was like a few months before. I was like, oh my god, because I don't know if this is true, but the term Yahweh, I had heard this means the awe, or maybe I looked it up afterwards. But I was like, oh my god, this is what they're talking about when they talk about God. It's that feeling of awe and wonder. And it's that feeling of wonder that opens up the synchronistic events happening in your life. And everyone does have that ability for that. But it's like fear keeps you out of that. It's a waste of time. Like, who cares about a sunset when you've got to pay your bills and you've got a mortgage and all this shit that keeps you tied in this way of having to do the same thing over and over and over again. And for whatever end, like that's the question: is it really intentional? Who's the end and why? And I don't think that's even relevant. I think what's relevant is that we all break out of it by stopping listening to authority
Yeah,
and
so
listening to each other, going back to recognizing the power we all have. Like the fucking governments, everything that happens is done by people. The fucking working class people, like the people who just do their job. That's what makes the world go round. And those are the least empowered people with the most power. They have to be, because and that's it's weird that I'm saying this, and I
they're the
sound like
ones that are driving
Marx.
the cogs. It's the
Yeah,
working
but they're
class,
also the
it's the
most.
salt
Yeah,
of the
yeah.
earth. They're
Yeah,
they're
yeah, yeah.
turning the
But that,
world
but
around.
that's what makes everything happen. Everything exists because of that. But then the government creates all these concepts that abstractly makes us think that it's the government who does this stuff. We think that there's these entities that exist that are
Smoke and
these
mirrors.
organizations, but they're just people. That was my point to Russell Brand. And I used the analogy of Kaiser Soze. I said the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was, but I reversed it. It's not, he convinced that he didn't exist. The government's convincing us that they do exist, but it's us doing it all. And it's just human power is everything, and we're all friends. People can all be friends. Like you said, we can all get along. It doesn't matter if we think differently. Everyone can get along, and we have all the
Yeah.
power. It's just there's just one little switch that needs to turn where everyone's like, oh no, we just need to do it ourselves. We have that fear that we need this government. We need to step in, so we can't deal with our own issues. We need a police force to come and protect us. We can't go and speak to, hey, do you mind like keeping your music down a bit? Like, no, we need to call the police or file a complaint. We have this intervening force that is just in our minds that we all go to, and it's like a parental thing. It's like, and I think it's all the way it's structured. You go to school, and then they have this like parental thing, and
It's
but it's
this.
just a tiny little change that needs to happen, and everything will change. And
Yeah.
it already has. But that's the thing. Like where are you from, by the way? Are you from Yorkshire?
No, I'm born and bred Leicester.
Oh, but it's close enough. My girlfriend's from Leeds, but they're
That's
amazing. But
160 miles away.
yeah, yeah, they're amazing in Leeds. Like the northern people are the best, but the authority is so strong there. You know what I mean? But even members who I know of the family who were but they all see it. After all the people, they all got the fucking thing, but now
Right.
they see it. Everyone got that thing, but that was the moment. That's when I had. That was the moment. That was the breaking of it all when that thing happened and
So
everyone saw it.
obviously you didn't have the thing.
Of course not. No.
And so why is it that we fucking spirited beings, we go, of course not. We would never dream of taking such shit because
Mm.
we saw it coming a
And
fucking
also
billion miles away.
I could see the intent of the thing that was doing that. I could see the intent behind this thing. I was like, why is, and that's what's been brought to light even by the people who are the most there. Everyone's like, that is insane. You know, like it's the thing. It's changed. That is over. I'm not certain. You can never be certain, but I think it's over. That was the end. That was the death of that authority structure, and now it's a matter of building the new world, really.
Yeah, and just to finish off, then the last like 10 minutes,
Yeah.
the way the world's going now is because they're always doing these tactics because they know that it's human consciousness that creates, and if we are left to our own devices, then we will be creating something which they don't have anything to do with or any jurisdiction
But
over.
it's unnecessary. There's a bunch of people who are just fucking like scraping the cream off the top, just draining everyone's life.
Yes,
You know, it's like
so
there are
of
people
course,
working so hard, and 90% of what they work for gets taken by someone who doesn't do shit. In
yeah.
fact, they make their life more difficult. On top of taking all their money, they make their life more annoying. Oh, you got to do this now. You got to do that now. It's like, what the fuck? It's
And with
totally
with
madness.
the control mechanism with the media on the terrorism, and
Yeah,
look at this, and look at this, and look at this.
yeah, yeah,
You know,
yeah, yeah.
if we just look back over the past, like, let's say, 10 years, then with this massive threat of terrorism, which all of a sudden came out of the mountains in Afghanistan, oh, very
Yeah,
very mysteriously, they all lived in
yeah.
these caves, really, with mobile phones and all the supplies and
And
what
also
a
engineer.
joke.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
then just overnight they'd all disappeared, and because the momentum had gone out of that, we were all getting tired of it. So there
Because
need
we
to
all
be another
realized that
boogeyman.
that was a
So
lie.
then they
Yeah,
do the
yeah,
old COVID thing, and then
yeah,
the
yeah,
momentum's gone out of that. And then of course before that they did the Kuwait and the weapons of mass destruction, and they're doing all these scare tactics. And now the next one, of course, is because they all have to be bigger, 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 because we're no longer we're getting numb to the fear
yeah,
factor of it. And
yeah,
so
yeah, yeah.
now they're going to have to do something real. And, there's lots of people like Alex Jones and Russell Brand and, Rogan and all these
Mm.
people that speak to a lot of people, a lot of
Yeah, yeah,
intellectuals.
loads.
And the general
Yeah.
consensus is that this time it's probably quite possible that they're going to do it because they've
Mm.
worked out that they can survive a small nuclear war. They
Mm.
can knock out Moscow. They can knock out Beijing. They've got their bunkers under wherever it is in secret locations and everything, and they've worked out that they will survive, and there'll be chaos on the world, and they'll put it back together within 5-10 years, and they'll have pretty well what they want: a massive population reduction. And the people that are watching these and have been watching them for a long, long time, the nefarious ones, they reckon that they will actually do it because they need to, because the rate of population growth,
Mm.
it's on a trajectory which is almost vertical.
It's
It's
crazy.
going up so exponentially. Within, say, 50 years' time, it's going to be, just massively overwhelming. And so they're all panicking about that, and they're panicking about the resources and what they're
Yeah.
going to do with all these, pink apes when
How
they're
am I gonna
no
have
longer.
how am I gonna have a caviar every meal? You know
Well,
what I mean?
yeah. Well, I mean, you see, we need to
Who's gonna make my
restructure
champagne?
humanity,
Yeah.
and I've said, look, to change the world and the mentality is going to take generations. They don't
Mm.
want generations. They haven't got time for generations. They want to see it within their lifespan, and
Mm.
so the only alternative is to cull. And so when you've culled, and then you instantly implement a massive regime change. And
Yeah, well,
doubtless
I mean,
all this going, the World Economic Forum, when you go onto their site and you click on one circle and it expands into 1,000 spokes, you click on one of those spokes and it expands into 1,000 spokes. You click on another one of those spokes, it
oh my God, I've
expands.
never
They've
been
got
on that
every
website.
fucking thing conceivable worked out. They've been working
Oh
on
my
it
God.
for a
Do
long,
you know,
long time.
what's so interesting is there was a random guy who I was speaking to like fairly recently here. Um, and again, he was the same type of person I saw, and we started talking about this stuff. And I was like, you know what it feels like, or we were both saying collectively, is like, it feels like what they're doing, right, is that they're just like, well, this could happen. I don't think it necessarily will, though. I think there's a chance that everything goes a different way. But I was like, it feels like that they're just putting in all these little things in place, piece by piece by piece by piece by piece, and then at some point, it's just going to be like a flip switch, and they turn it on, and the next thing you know, you're in a fucking in a prison. You know what I mean? Like they're putting all these little walls in place, and
Yeah,
suddenly
yeah.
they're just gonna go boom, and it's like boom, you fucked, stuck now, got you. You know, like checkmate in chess. You know, like
Yeah.
I'm shit at chess, but you know how chess works. Like where if you ever play when you're playing, and then you're doing all this stuff, and it seems like everything's going well, and suddenly the guy's like boom, got you, and
Yeah.
I was planning for 5 moves ahead. It's like shit.
Yes, because they're slowly creeping up on us. And you see, the only thing we need to look at these days is the millions of young fighting age immigrants that are all shacked up all over Europe,
That's
in
weird.
America as well. And
It's weird.
so you see what they're speaking about now is America is just surreptitiously introducing draft laws, and the
Yeah, yeah,
first
yeah.
thing that they've got ahead of the bill is that they have the right to draft all immigrants. So that's
Exactly.
why
Well, it makes
Biden's
sense.
been bringing them all in, millions
Mm,
of them.
mm.
There's been 3 million or something in the last couple of years, and all over Europe we've got these people, and the governments are spending millions on them, keeping them in prestigious hotels and everything like that. Well, why have we got all these young, brown people who have been oppressed and they feel like they're being oppressed by the white man, so they
And
hate
they
the white
have
man. So
their
now
lives,
they're in
that's why they're
camps,
here.
and we're within no time at all of a sudden, you'll see when there's a civil unrest, when they decide to close in, all of these brown people will be in uniforms. They'll have the insignia of BlackRock on them. There'll be BlackRock police officers, army officers, and they will be licensed to shoot and kill with the drop of a hat. And
Well,
that's
do you
what
know what
I.
was weird? You know, what's so weird is I've been keeping up with that stuff as well. And just a few days ago, um, and 2 days this week, there've been military driving around, and I'm like, what? I live in an island. This is like I'm here because this is like one of the freest places in the
Oh,
world.
so
Absolutely.
what you in the
No,
Canary Islands
no,
or you in
no, in
Ibiza?
Ibiza, in Ibiza.
Ibiza,
But
right?
what people don't know about it is like it's got this idea of being this party crazy place, but it is because there's so much freedom here. There's an old culture here which has a very they have their own language, they have their own way of doing stuff, and it's extraordinarily free and lovely for people. It's like a paradise. But anyway, I saw police. I mean, army driving around, and I was like, I've been here for like 10 years. Like I've been coming and going for a long time, and I used to work as a driver, and I would drive all day long, all day long. I've never seen an army man in my life here before, and there was just trucks of them in lines, and I'm like, all right, maybe they're doing like drills. I have no idea, but it was weird. And also the other thing, again, it's these little signs. I got I got beaten and almost killed by the police this year. Outside of a children's, it wasn't a children's event. I thought it was. I went with my kids. It was like an opening thing of like at this like peaceful place. Um, it was crazy. I looked at this guy. He didn't know I had my family with me. He just thought I was some guy but it's about my mind. He looked. He said something to me, and I looked at him like, "Who the fuck are you to talk to me like that?" And next thing I know, he jumps on me, because he must have been a plainclothes police officer. I have no idea. I didn't know, but I obviously resisted, and he threw me to the ground. But I'm not. I don't look strong, but I have it force. And I was like, no fucking way. No one's holding me down. And I was like fighting like that. They put the knee on the back of my neck or something, choked me out. And then I woke up in a fucking hospital. They almost killed me. I was resuscitated.
Wow.
No recourse, nothing. I was like, but I was like, this is a sign. That was a sign that, like, that for me. I'd like, because again, I've always been like, that's why I left. That's why I left. It was just very shortly before COVID that I left England because I had a feeling. I was like, I don't like the vibe here right now. I feel like I need to get out of here.
So that
Um,
happened in England.
no, that happened in Spain.
Oh, right, that
The,
happened in
the Spanish
Spain.
police, the Spanish police are very militant, but I just thought this is like that's like a sign, that's pretty extreme. That's
And
pretty extreme.
was it an undercover police officer that did it to you?
It was like 4 police officers. It was
Right.
the guy who I provoked was obviously not dressed as a police officer. Otherwise, I would have been like, "Oh, okay, psychopath, whatever." But
Yeah.
but all I did was look at him. I didn't even say a word. I just looked at him like, "Who the fuck is this guy?" And boom, jumps on me. And because oh, now he's resisting. I remember. I only know this because I remember seeing the feet, and I know what their shoes they wear because they wear these ridiculous shoes. They look retarded. But there were like 4 of them standing around me, and they're obviously like I was with my kids. I have 2 young kids and my girlfriend, and then like like we can drive home. Like they were like interrogating her. Where are you from? Where all this shit? Like we were like fucking like some sort of like like I don't know, it was crazy. But I was like, that's a sign, that's very unhuman level of evil, not evil, of untestable authority. That's
Yeah,
the
yeah,
desire,
yeah,
the will to control is so extreme that
yeah,
they're not
and
even like seeing the kids. And but I was like, it's so funny. It was like, um, when I knew it was like, I was like, no, they're not gonna give me. So I was like shrieking. I was like, ah! Like making because I knew I couldn't like do anything. So I was like, I'm just gonna freak this guy out as fuck. He's never gonna forget this again, like ever. I was just like shrieking like an animal when they're trying to, because I was like, this guy's gonna knock me out. I'm like, I'm not gonna be knocked out, but if I am, I'm gonna scar this guy for life. If I can't, like, but yeah, that was a sign. To me, that was a sign.
yeah,
Um,
uh,
a big
w-
sign. And then
and of
it just reminded me because of the military around. I never seen that before. Driving
mm,
around in things, and they have a look. They have a look. Not it's this is the way that these thought systems work that create these um, identities in people's minds where this is the thing of the way that language works to create authority where people they you become trained to just think of the words. You get orders and you think of the words, and you then at some point stop to see the reality, and then you can do atrocities. That's the way, that's the training, and that's all this stuff that we get in the news and all this stuff basically that we're talking about. And that's what, this is the thing of why it's better if people don't think, because then people be like, wait, no, what are you talking about? It's just that person is the same as that person. They're both people. What makes a difference? What makes a difference? Why is there's no difference between people? Why is that one in a camp and why is that one in a house? And what's the difference? There's no difference, like, but the rights, that's all in law, and that's all in words, these unquestionable rules that are written in language, and that's the big thing.
mm. Yeah, it's becoming very militant, and of course, during the COVID time, we saw rogue, feral governments. We saw how
Yeah,
it wasn't a local thing; it was a global thing. Canada and Australia and
yeah,
many other countries just getting excessively. They'd evidently been given license to
yeah.
be absolutely, completely excessive in what they do. Like truncheon in women in the stomach.
But the fact is that people actually, the thing is that it's people enforcing this, That's the crazy thing, is that this is
Yeah,
people
yeah.
doing this.
It's
That's
all these
this
fucking
shocking
Muppets
thing.
and drones
And
that, that,
it's
that
like
I.
it's suddenly everyone becomes like this, like, oh yeah, kill the unvaccinated. And it's like, what?
Yeah,
Where did
yeah,
that come from? But
yeah,
that's
yeah,
been trained into us. It's the same thing. It's literally the same impulse that was in what Hitler activated. It's the
yeah.
same thing. That's what I'm
All you
saying
got
when
to
you're
do
looking
is
at
a little bit of
tendencies.
propaganda, and you've got
Yeah,
the
yeah.
masses, the drones, exactly where you want
Yeah,
them. This
but
is
it's
one
exactly
of
what
the
we're talking about
reasons.
with good and evil running through the heart of all men. It's
Yeah,
this. It's the fact is, if you don't see, if you are not taking the time to see the truth of things, which is that, like, there is a. Have you ever heard of Mark Passio? He does
yeah,
natural law.
yeah. Watched load of his
Yes,
stuff.
that's the point. We all need to understand that
Yeah,
don't there's like three rules that if we all took that to heart, then none of this would even be possible. No,
yeah,
it wouldn't be possible.
yeah.
Don't encroach on other people's rights. Don't let your rights be encroached on. Don't take other people's property. Don't hurt them. Don't take their houses. And if
Yeah.
everyone followed that, it would be a totally different place. There would be no authority as we know it today.
Yeah, but all that has changed in recent times, and it's going to keep changing. So we'll
Yeah,
wrap this one up here then,
yeah,
Tom.
it's
And
getting dark.
2 hours 50 minutes, yeah. And so great to meet you and to chat,
Yeah, you
and
too, man.
have
This has been super cool.
yeah, and to have you on board on the channel, and so we'll do it again, in a couple of weeks
Yeah,
or something like that. And now we can hold a good conversation. We
yeah,
can get a little
exactly.
bit deeper into more subject
Definitely.
matter. You know,
Definitely. And anyone watching this, follow my channel, because I've got 2 followers. So anyone who's interested in this, do follow my channel. I don't post all the time, but
well,
definitely
what I'll
do.
do is I'm going to put your channel down in the
Yeah.
description below
Yeah.
to alert them all to it, because the chances are nobody's got to the end of this video.
Yeah, true.
How
True.
fickle they are.
Well, I always watch the end of videos. But again, this is us. We're having this conversation right now, so I think it says it all.
Yeah, yeah, but when I look on my statistics
Yeah, I
and
noticed that.
analytics, it just tells a shocking story, and it's kind of like, wow, it's almost like nobody ever gets to my end of my videos, but
It's
there's quite
crazy.
a lot of people that do, and so I don't know what the fuck's happened with this.
That's who we're talking to. Those are the people who are actually thinking, because there's not a lot of people who are able to really cut through and see what's going on.
Yeah,
That's
and
the
to
thing.
get
Even
involved in the conversation that
yeah,
we're having,
exactly.
because the vast
Yeah, yeah,
majority of people will be just completely lost of the depth we're
yeah,
speaking to and the names we're
exactly.
speaking about,
Yeah,
which is, fair enough. Okay, yeah, great.
dude,
Nice one, Tom. And
awesome.
so,
Yeah,
yeah, we'll do it again and we'll be in touch, yeah?
absolutely. Yeah, man, have a
Uh,
nice day
you
or
take
night.
have a good night, mate.
Yeah,
Bye now.
take care, man. All right.